across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm afraid there's going to be less talk of breasts today on my show than on Jez's show about Polanski. Although, what a surprise. Oh, politicians lie. I know. I'm as shocked as you are. Do you know what they also do? They have very, very bad judgment when it comes to appointing their big mates to key jobs representing this country. And that, to me, is absolutely the biggest story of the day today. So whether you are listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it's lovely to have your company, and I cannot wait to hear from you on all the big topics, but in particular on the judgment of the Prime Minister. Because what does it say, given that Keir Starmer blatantly ignored, as we saw in those documents released yesterday, the first tranche of evidence, ignored warnings not just from the security vetting, from everything in the public domain that was on the front page of newspapers, for goodness sake, and from his own top aides, including his national security advisor and the head of the Foreign Office. I mean, come on. What more advice do you need about Peter Mandelson's close links with Jeffrey Epstein? He absolutely knew about those links, and he appointed him as ambassador anyway. What does this say about the Prime Minister's judgment? Give us a call. Let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. You can also, of course, send us a WhatsApp. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1. Standard network rate message. Posts on X, of course, are completely free. Put out a question online and you can answer that, and we'll get those messages on air as soon as we can. But I mean, it seems to me very, very clear that there was clear evidence that the Prime Minister knew that Mandelson was, as he would advised, a reputational risk, not just to the government, to the country, to the Prime Minister himself. And what I find utterly extraordinary is that Peter Mandelson was so outraged by his sacking for basically lying in his job interview, which is basically what he did, according to the Prime Minister, unless the Prime Minister lied to us in the House of Commons a few weeks back. He says he was lied to, and that's why he appointed him. But when he basically was sacked, he demanded a £547,000 payout, threatened to go to tribunal, according to these documents. If I were the Prime Minister, I'd have said, bring it on, we're not paying you a penny. But what did he want covered up? Well, the civil service seemed to think they got a good deal, paying just, let me check, £75,000 to Peter Mandelson. A lot of that, by the way, would have been tax-free to a man who was already a multi-millionaire. And he got an extra 75k, your and my money. Civil service just handing that out, not worrying about it. I want every single penny of that paid back, by the way. Every single penny. So we're going to be talking about that. Plenty more besides, including the latest on the Iran war. The House of Lords, led by the likes of Toby Young from the Free Speech Union, backing plans to scrap non-crime hate incidents. That would be a big win, would it not? A probe into debt trap student finances, and why hundreds of GPs have never turned down a single request from a patient asking for a sick note to get them off work for weeks or even months on end. All that coming up. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Delighted to say today, haven't seen him for a bit, Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer, joins me in the studio. Morning.
Morning.
Lovely to see you. Ever been given a 75k payoff for getting sacked from a job for gross misconduct?
No, unfortunately.
No. With that, because that literally happens to no one.
Exactly. Well, unless your name's Mandelson, or someone going out of government.
Yeah. I mean, it genuinely, incandescent doesn't do justice to how angry I am about this.
Well, I can't believe
the chutzpah of asking for over $500,000. But there's it. But are they stupid, or is it? There's a difference between poor judgment and being stupid. Keir Starmer is clearly not a stupid man. He's. I know. Try and keep a straight face, everybody. On paper, he looks like he can pass an exam and he can get a job. He rose to the top ranks of the
Not a very good barrister. I would not want him on my side. I
would not want that guy on my side. Absolutely. I'd be like, God, he's against me. Yeah, we're going to win this one. Not a good politician. Definitely not a good Prime Minister. We're discussing that on the show yesterday. It just seems to me to be utterly, utterly extraordinary that the Prime Minister thinks he can get away with just, OK, you get the resignation of Morgan McSweeney, his chief of staff, because basically he was pushing for his big, mentor, Mandelson, to get that job as a US ambassador a British ambassador to the US. But he seems to think that, they're blaming the process, they're blaming the vetting. He's claimed in Parliament that he was lied to by Peter Mandelson, so obviously there was some questioning.
You blame everyone else.
I know, very unlike the Prime Minister, isn't it? But the clear thing is, there was stuff in the public domain. It was on the front pages of Financial Times and other newspapers. He was shown those articles. There was clear evidence. We knew for a fact he had been sacked from 2 previous jobs for dishonesty. That's why he lost his 2 other previous jobs in Parliament. He was known he had close links to Chinese businesses. That was a big question mark in terms of vetting anyway. It was known at that time he was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, close enough friends that he'd stayed in his apartment in New York. God, the fact that Jeffrey Epstein had an apartment and a house in New York, a bit of a giveaway. Not only after he'd been convicted, but while Jeffrey Epstein was in prison. Not that it was an open prison, not that he served much actual prison time, that we would recognise as prison time. He was off in his private jet some of the time, for goodness sake. But while he was actually technically behind bars for soliciting an underage girl for prostitution. And Mandelson apparently saw no issue with this, and it would appear neither did the Prime Minister. My issue with this, Philip, is not only does this damage the reputation of our country, of our diplomatic corps, of the judgment of our Prime Minister, I would say to the level of it being a resigning matter. I agree with Kemi Badenoch. There's absolutely resigning matter in terms of his judgment, because it appears to me that he has lied to Parliament at the very least, but also poor judgment. But the thing is, this is a man. He's got a teenage daughter. At the time of this appointment, I'm thinking, I don't know exactly when she was. I think she was 15. Yeah. So a girl, and I don't normally bring families of politicians into it. I think they've got a right to a private life. But our Prime Minister apparently didn't think it was that big a deal that his big mate, aka the Prince of Darkness, who was going to appoint to this top, highly paid, absolute top-notch job, the most important diplomatic job in Britain, that he was big mates with someone who had been convicted, not just suspected, had been convicted of paedophile crimes, and by the time he appointed him, was known to be one of the most prolific abusers and rapists of young, teenage girls. He's got a teenage girl. How does he look at her over the breakfast table and spout his absolute nonsense about caring about tackling violence against women and girls? Because he clearly didn't care about that. When he appointed Mandelson, who was basically an apologist for a man who'd committed heinous sex and violence crimes against girls the same age as the Prime Minister's own daughter. To me, this wouldn't even be a resigning matter. If I were Mrs. Starmer, this would be a divorce matter. I
don't know how Lady Victoria can sit there at the same
Lady
table
Starmer.
as him. Lady Starmer. Sit there at the same table with him. And it's clear that Keir Starmer hasn't watched Yes, Prime Minister. Because it's I remember the very famous one where Sir Humphrey was turning around and saying, "That's a very brave decision, Prime Minister," and that puts this reputational risk phrase into civil service speak. It's a reputational risk. That's sort of massive red flags, alarm bells, and everything else. A lot of this language in these
huge number of documents, a lot of this language is quite sort of couched and it's not sort of. There's nothing there saying, "Do not hire this guy. He's close mates with a pedo."
But I'm sorry, reputational risk is civil service speak for do not hire this guy, he's close mates with a pedo.
This is how these things are couched. Everyone was saying, don't do this. Morgan McSweeney, by all accounts, persuaded the Prime Minister. Again, he's already gone. But here's the thing, you appoint your own advisors.
Well, and again, you say, everyone's saying, don't do this. David Lammy said, don't do this. But actually, we find in the documents that he signed to say, do it. So this isn't just at the Prime Minister. We're getting all of his senior cabinet members who have lied to us.
I'm again shocked as you are. Jonathan Powell, National Security Advisor. Again, Jonathan Powell worked with Tony Blair very closely. He was chief of staff at the same time. Also, the Mandelson was also there. He knows him well, and he was going, "Oh, this was all a bit rushed and unusual."
Yes, that in itself.
Again, these aren't little red flags. No. This isn't someone in the distance waving. No. These are huge, big, bright red neon signs saying don't do it, and the Prime Minister went ahead. How can he continue this role?
He can't. There's no way can he. His ability, his judgment is shot completely, and I think the only thing that is keeping him in post at the moment is the Labour Party are waiting to the end of the local council elections, and they're going to try and get rid of it all in one go and go for a clean start. Because if they do anything now, they're going to have to try and find another clean start after that.
Yeah. I mean, it's so clear, isn't it, that Starmer and his aides were obviously thinking, oh, you know, they don't like the war in Iran. They don't, again, it's too much making a decision, isn't it? It's all, they love to sit on a fence post. But at least it sort of takes attention. I've seen quite a few conspiracy theorists online saying, oh, this is very convenient for Trump and everyone else, that this takes the attention away. No, the Mandelson is leading on the front pages of every single newspaper. There's your giveaway. This doesn't make this go away. People are outraged by this, and quite rightly. Again, I'm with you. He's not going to go. They've got, you know, but he's a dead man walking, no question at all.
He's got no credibility, and he's lost his international credibility as well over this, but over you know, his flip-flopping with regard to support for
what did you make of those exchanges at P&Q's yesterday? I mean, it wasn't a great performance by either. Premier Bennett was asking questions about petrol prices, and Prime Minister was answering questions about something else. Like it was like, are you two actually in the same room?
I thought it was pathetic yesterday, actually.
But Keir Starmer was basically saying that, you know, people like Nigel Farage and Premier Bennett, you guys have flip-flopped.
Well, you know, all politicians flip-flop, but actually the most important ones are the ones that are in power, who have to make decisions.
Who presumably also have the security briefings.
Well, exactly. And again, you know, I'm of the adage that, you know, if you never change your mind, why have one? But if you're going to change your mind, admit it, and admit you've got something wrong, and give a reason.
Yeah.
And if you're the key decision maker, you know, if you're changing your mind with everything that you do, then you're getting something fundamentally wrong.
Yeah, and it is everything. It really is, isn't it? Well, look, Donald Trump declared yesterday that war with Iran had been won. It doesn't look like it after that massive barrage of missiles we've seen overnight, particularly on the tankers and cargo ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Oil is up to above $100 a barrel again. I mean, it got up to 120, went back down to about 90, and it's gone back up again with these firing on these ships in the Gulf. We've also got warnings from the FBI that Iran could target drones at California. Drone warfare has changed everything in terms of the cost of them, the mobility of them, and the ability of people to, with, you know, nefarious aims, to tackle ordinary civilians. We've also got that US interim report that suggested it was a US Tomahawk missile that struck that girls' school in Iran, the one that was next to an IRGC building, a military installation. So, again, I don't believe for a nanosecond it was targeted deliberately by America. No. I really don't. That's an instant. Everyone's spending the rest of their lives in jail. That's not what happens. Mistakes happen in war. The difference is Iran deliberately does target civilians. Look, you're an expert in this field. I've not had the chance to talk to you since the war began about all this. Tell us your big picture of where we are. Should we be involved? Is it the right thing to do?
Right. Involved, should we be involved? Yes. We have been involved from the very outset as part of the planning and the whole way through. So Keir Starmer turning around and saying the UK is not involved and not contributing to it, he has lied to the country on that.
You say we are involved?
No, we have been the whole way through, 100%.
And yet we didn't prep by sending things like, you know, HMS Dragon to the Met.
If you look at what Keir Starmer said whenever he talked about permissions for the Americans, he was very careful on his language. He's a lawyer. He chooses his words carefully. He restricted RAF Fairford and Diego Garcia for the first few days, and then he flip-flopped and changed his mind because whenever Cyprus got hit with the drone and said, oh, only defensive targets then. He didn't mention any of the other assets that were being used as part of the preparation, the build-up and everything else. So he's misled the country in the way he's put his statements out. Did America need to go in at this time to do what they're doing? No. Unless they had intelligence to suggest that potentially Iran was acquiring a nuclear warhead either from Russia or from North Korea.
Or China, wasn't there some talk about China as well?
Yeah, China, there'll be talk about China, but China unlikely to supply to Iran. But if they're going to do it, they do it through North Korea or they do it through Russia. Now, we know that there's been Russian technology provided to the Iranians because they've upgraded their Shahad 136 drones. The one that hit Cyprus had Russian guidance technology in it that was designed to avoid electronic warfare to bring it down. So we know that technology transfer is there. And if there were days, if there were days off something being transferred, and we will never know this because it would be at a highly classified level, then what Donald Trump and what the Israelis did was right.
But even if they suspected that it was the case, and we know, I mean, I had an argument with a Richard Dalton, a former ambassador to Iran. I mean, quite laughably, I thought, claiming that we have no reason to believe, effectively that Iran was trying to get a nuclear weapon. I mean, yeah, we do. They're enriching uranium to 60%, not necessary at all for any civilian use of civilian nuclear reactors.
And if Steve Witkoff's to be believed, in the negotiations that were going in, the Iranian opening line was, we've got 460 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, enough to make 11 nuclear bombs. Now, it's not enough to make 11 nuclear warheads, but you do not need to enrich uranium to 60% for civilian purposes.
That's just a fact. That's just end of.
I've done nuclear engineering at university.
That fact alone is dangerous enough to me. And we know they're nutters. They had declared war. It's clear to me a defensive war by America. They had declared war on America. Death to America. They have marches about
170 attacks against American and allied targets across the Middle East in the past 12 months. Down to Iran directly or Iranian proxies. And proxies are controlled by the IRGC.
And completely funded.
And completely funded and completely supplied.
The arguments about this sort of international law, I mean, again, I thought they were just laughable, that people said this is clearly laughable. This is a preemptive defensive war. And again, should we have, in the Second World War, should we have waited for Nazi troops to be turned up on our shores before we attacked Hitler? No, of course not. This is how you fight a war. Also, the fact that it does appear that they went in sooner than they would be planning to, because they had this opportunity with their sources on the ground, well, Israelis clearly, Mossad sources, that all of the entire Iranian leadership were going to be in one place at one time, and that was too good an opportunity to miss. I mean, I support them. I'd shake the hand of every single person involved. These people are murderers and tyrants. Glad to be rid of them. Do you think there is any end coming to this war, though? That's the worry people have. Is they may say, well, I'm glad Iranian leaders are ousted, etc., but I'm not sure this is going to end well. We're going to be in the quagmire of Iran or Afghanistan.
It depends on how we define end. Donald Trump could stop the bombing and the attack on Iran tomorrow. Would that then change the situation and the stability of the region and the stability of the world? No. Because
even though Iran has been massively curtailed in its ability to attack others?
Well, it's been curtailed with its conventional military forces and its potential nuclear capability. But we have to remember that Iran is one of the, or is the largest sponsor of global terrorism. And therefore, Iran will want to, especially if you've got elements of the old regime still there and the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard Corps, still there. They will want to get vengeance somehow or other. This is
we're seeing that being played out right now.
This is the biggest worry. They will take that out through unconventional grey zone type attacks, and then they'll get into terror attacks, and they will expand those terror attacks across the globe. So we'll see them across Europe, we'll see them in London, we'll see them in the United States. Hence why Donald Trump has talked about drones in California. But we have to remember there were 4 Iranians arrested by security services in London, by counter-terror police on behalf of security services in London at the beginning of this week. And they were checking out, they were gathering intelligence on Jewish communities around. That's targeting. That's pre-targeting. There will be sleeper cells around the place.
And there was talk about them being enacted. What do you make of that ban on the Al-Quds March, annual march? Basically, I mean, Al-Quds, it means Jerusalem. It was set up by the previous one Ayatollah, as an annual day, basically an anti-Israel. It means Jerusalem. It's an anti-Israel, anti-Jewish march, supposedly pro-Palestinian, but most of these things are just anti-Jew. That's what let's call them what they are. And that march has been going ahead for years. There's been Hezbollah flags, a terrorist flag. There've been outrageous anti-Semitic chants and the like. They're worried about trouble, in particular in the context of you've got the war in Iran going on right now. But with our troops, having to, our warships having to go to the Middle East to protect, military bases, to protect Brits at a time when Iran is targeting them. The idea that you'd have a march, I mean, it's not going to be a march, but it's going to be a static protest. But as one caller just pointed out on JK show, well, they'll still have to get to that protest.
And carry their banners.
We didn't have marches pro-Hitler during the Second World War. So why is it allowed to go ahead at all?
It should be banned. Well, we're not under martial law. That's the trouble. And we do still live in a free democratic society where the right to peacefully protest is enshrined in.
Is it peaceful if you're carrying a terrorist flag?
But this is where the analysis analysis needs to come in. The potential for it to not be peaceful or for it to be manipulated by those that want to cause it remains there, and therefore I think it should be banned completely.
Okay. Let's also talk about the Home Office, another story just finally, which is the Home Office refusing to reveal just how many failed asylum seeker families have accepted the £40,000 offer. This happened while I was away on holiday. I'm just apoplectic about this. Taxpayers' money to leave Britain. Basically, if you can get here, we'll give you 40k to leave, because it costs 30k apparently. No, 50k to get rid of them, a minimum. So we'll offer them 40k, literally basically saying if you can pay £1.5 grand each to get over here and you apply for asylum, you're going to live for free in an asylum hotel, you'll be given perfectly decent accommodation and 3 meals a day, and probably be able to work off the books as well if you come here probably for many years. But if you do actually fail your asylum application and you finally get to you on the list, they'll give you 40k to leave. I mean, it's another pull factor, isn't it? But the Home Office won't say how many have accepted this.
Yeah, well, I've got a new job now. Abdullah Al Padistan is my name, and I'm coming across the channel 3 times a year, and I'm going to £120,000 a year.
It's nice
tax free. It's great.
I mean, that's probably,
and I get flown
it's easier than the work Mandelson does to get his payouts.
I get flown on business class back to Paris. I spend a few weeks in Paris and then come back over again. It's ridiculous.
It still bothers me. It still bothers me that these people have flown on BA to Paris. Yeah. I'm sorry. You put them on a ferry. Or put them on the cheap airlines.
No, we've got lots of little rubber dinghies that have washed up on our beaches with engines in them. We put them back in there. We put the engine in one direction and say, away you go.
It's so painful sometimes, isn't it? It's so painful.
Yeah, they've failed asylum seekers. Chuck them out.
Bye.
Send them to Rwanda. Wouldn't that be good? Yes.
Rwanda would have worked if we were planning to send 100,000, but there we are.
But we could have. It could have been scaled up.
I know. It's just. I mean, I'd love to get 40 grand to get.
I'm going to retire.
I mean, to be fair, looking at what airline prices are, it's going to cost 40 grand to get a flight to France at this rate, folks. 10:24 is the time. I want to hear from you everything we're talking about, but in particular about Keir Starmer. It's now. I mean, we knew already, but it's in black and white now. He ignored all of the advice of the security vetting, all of the publicly available information, all of his top aides, basically, apart from Morgan McSweeney, who's chief of staff, who's gone already, thank goodness, about Peter Mandelson's very close links with his, quote, best pal, Jeffrey Epstein, before appointing him as our ambassador to the United States. What does this say about the PM's judgment? Do you think, like I do, that this is a resigning matter, and in fact, I would add a divorcing matter for him and his wife, given that he's got a teenage daughter the same age as the girls who were routinely being raped and beaten by Jeffrey Epstein, which apparently didn't bother either Mandelson or the Prime Minister. And no, you can't deny you didn't know about it. It was front page news for a long time, guys. 10:24 is the time. I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. This is Talk.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something. stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views.
I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:27 is the time. Just to let you know, the Prime Minister is on a trip to Belfast this morning, I think he's speaking around the midday mark, and will no doubt have to face some rather tough questioning about those Mandelson documents that came out yesterday, deliberately published straight after PMQs, so that Prime Minister wasn't in the chamber, wasn't answering questions, supposedly has a week before he has to appear before the MPs in the House of Commons again, but the pressure is absolutely on him and he won't be able to escape it today. We'll bring you that live when we get it. Right now, let's bring you live your comments and your thoughts on those Mandelson documents, that tranche of documents exposing the Prime Minister ignored clear warnings about the appointment of a man known as the Prince of Darkness, for goodness sake, big mates of the convicted paedophile, appointing him as our ambassador to the US. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Barry's done that. He's in Norwich. Hello, Barry.
Good morning, Julia. Just
morning.
A couple of quick comments. One about Mandelson and Starmer, and one about this march, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Personally, I think Starmer should go. He has to go. He can't remain Prime Minister of this country. It's just, yeah. You know, the guy.
Well, as Kemi Badenoch says he should go, but she's saying, but we can't force him out. It's only up to Labour MPs.
Well, I personally think Starmer's a security risk, and I personally think I worry about if the security services have warned him about Mandelson, and he's ignored that. What else is he ignored from the security services?
Good point.
What worries me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing about this march. Could you imagine? I mean, I'm old enough to remember the Troubles in Ireland. Could you imagine Margaret Thatcher, the Home Secretary in Margaret Thatcher's government, just after they blew up the hotel she was staying in and blew up all the bandsmen in London, allowing a march by IRA sympathisers to happen in London? I mean, you know, this is a Home Secretary who reckons she hasn't got the power to stop it.
Well, no, she's stopping the march, and this is the first time the powers have been used since 2012. Last time it was an EDL march, and they've not stopped. They've chosen not to stop the pro-Pally marches, which are just anti-Semitic marches in all but name. But they're going to allow, people are allowed to gather. I think they're going to be able to gather at the Home Office, but not carry out a big protest march through London. Is that a fair compromise?
No, it's not. Do you know what I mean? No. These marches have to stop. This is the United Kingdom. We can't have these marches. You know, if you want to march about Palestine or Israel or Iran, or go over there and do it. Do you know what I mean? We don't want it here. Do you know what I mean? We don't want it.
I would love to see these people around. Again, they feel so strongly about Iran. Oh, again, off you go. Off you go. I mean, those Iranian footballers were able to get back, weren't they? Off you go. No, Barry, thank you very much indeed for both those comments. Nick is in London, wants to have his say on Mandelson. Good morning to you, Nick.
Yeah, hello, Julia.
Hello.
I don't get how the Westminster world, the wider Westminster world, allows Keir Starmer to stay in post. I mean, there's many lines he's crossed. I mean, how many more does he get? And you know, we are entitled to expect the executive in this country hold the highest standards, are decent at their job. Yeah. And the best you can say about this, is that Starmer was incompetent.
Yeah, that's the most generous interpretation.
Correct. That is the most generous. And we're entitled to expect better than that. So I don't get, as I say, how the media, newspapers, backbenchers, civil servants
Yeah.
You know, just allow him to stay in post.
Well, in a different time, he would resign for lack of integrity. I mean, it would just be as a matter of honour. I've made this terrible mistake, and he would have resigned already.
Correct. And but it shows how far we have fallen as a country, society, that resigning because you're not up to the job.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. The last person doing that, wasn't there an education secretary under Blair's government who resigned because she recognised she wasn't good enough?
Was it Estelle Morris? Did you say
Estelle Morris rings a bell.
Yeah, I think I can't remember if I'm being very rude to Estelle if that wasn't her, but yeah, that sounds very familiar. But again, he's so blatantly not up to the job, but he's also. But again, this was such a poor judgment, and you know, and as Barry just pointed out, you know, if he's ignoring security vetting advice, and again, a lot of this is, it's not don't hire him under no circumstances. It's civil service speak for don't hire him under any circumstances. But if he's ignoring that advice, what other advice, what other security advice is he ignoring? This is the really terrifying. This man has no judgment.
Correct, and he is a lawyer. He chooses words very carefully,
doesn't he?
But also he knows reading the underlying words, not the message. He knows what words mean and what's not said.
Yeah,
he knew perfectly well.
Yeah,
that they were saying don't touch him with a barge pole. And it's not as if we're talking about someone with a previously blameless life. We're talking about Peter Mandelson. It reminds me of the old joke, you know, be honest, Peter. You know, be honest, Peter. Ha ha.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
He's got form. So as soon as he gets something across his desk that says this is all a bit smelly, which is effectively what it said, he should have had the ability, the common sense, the nous, the presence, whatever it is, to say no. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's brilliant in lots of ways. He's very clever. He's very knowledgeable. He's got a lot of the right skills we need. However, he's not an appropriate person. Again, remember when Wayne Couzens was identified, you know, as the murderer, the rapist and abductor and murderer of Sarah Everard? He was a police officer, and we found out his nickname in the police station was the Rapist. Yeah. Peter Mandelson's nickname was the Prince of Darkness and has been for 20-odd years. Maybe there's a clue. Maybe there's a clue that there's, you know, he's got a dark soul and he's not to be trusted. It's just extraordinary. Nick, thank you very much indeed. It must bear in mind, of course, I mean, we're talking about stuff that is not illegal, that Peter Mandelson has done that's not illegal. He also faces criminal charges. That stuff came out since, but he actually does also face criminal charges, and he denies that wrongdoing. I know, Philip, Ingram, you want to come back in very briefly? Yeah.
The Prime Minister turned around and his whole excuse is that Peter Mandelson lied to him. Yeah. But actually the documents that have come out are quite clear. You know, he didn't need to rely on what Peter Mandelson said. The documents were saying Peter Mandelson was a reputational risk and outlined everything where there was.
So the Prime Minister has lied to the Commons,
Prime Minister has
which
lied
itself used to be a resigning matter.
Well, it's against the ministerial code, and therefore he has to go.
This is one of the key things about asking key questions. Kemi Badenoch, of course, asking those key questions at PMQs. You know, did he know at the time? You know, yes. Yeah. You know, right. I'm going to put a lot of this to someone who's been around and watched this a long time. Would have known the Prince of Darkness before he's even called the Prince of Darkness. The former political editor of The Sun, Trevor Kavanagh. He's up next. Stay tuned for that. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:37 is the time. Let's speak now to Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun. A very good morning to you, Trevor.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, the Tory leader, has just said in a statement, in any normal circumstances, the Prime Minister would be resigning. He's been shown to have lied to the Commons. Labour MPs now need to consider their position and ask themselves whether this man should be leading the country. Do you agree that this whole affair and the Mandelson tranche of papers that came out yesterday has exposed that the Prime Minister did lie, and he's shown poor judgment in appointing Mandelson as our ambassador despite the security vetting and the advice from aides? And should he go?
Absolutely, and I think we've been talking about a question of judgment. Excuse me. This is not a question of judgment. It's a question of deceit, and I think that what we have is a Prime Minister who is deceitful and will happily lie or refuse to admit the truth, which is the same thing, about things which are abundantly evident. And we've had this the reports in papers like The Times today talking about how Jonathan Powell, who is after all Downing Street security advisor, warning Starmer that they've always had problems with Peter Mandelson. I mean,
he'd worked with him.
You and I have witnessed most of them. I have more than you, but when he says that Peter is always a disaster, we always end up having to fire him. That is what he told the Prime Minister. And he is his closest security advisor. This is not a matter of him, Keir Starmer, wondering whether he should or should not appoint the man. He knew all the facts. He was not misled by Peter Mandelson, who lied to him.
Well, we haven't seen that document. That's the one thing, because there's a criminal investigation ongoing. And again, I do not understand why that conversation, which we think took place between Keir Starmer and Peter Mandelson, or the questions that Keir Starmer asked his aides to ask Peter Mandelson, he claimed in the House of Commons in direct questioning at PMQs from Kemi Badenoch a few weeks ago. He very clear answer. Was he lied to? Yes. I was lied. Did you know? Yes. And then says he was lied to.
I mean, it doesn't matter whether Peter Mandelson lied or not. Exactly. That's what he does. And he lies and lies and lies. He's not a snake oil salesman. He is the original snake oil. And, that's his trademark. And for Keir Starmer to accept his word, which is in total opposition to all the established facts which were laid out bare on the table for Starmer to look at, not least the fact that Mandelson stayed at Epstein's flat while Epstein was in jail. That single fact alone should have been enough to stop him becoming our most important diplomat.
What's also extraordinary is how little vetting there was done, and the fact that he was basically in the job, seeing top-level official secret documents. I mean, vital documents to our on national security and economic safety and resilience and the like. And he was seeing the documents despite not having fulfilled all of the security vetting, which by all accounts in the civil service, this won't surprise anyone, can be pretty slow. But that in itself is extraordinary. But we've had a minister out doing the rounds today, and all credit, having to do this particular defence, but that's the job if you're in the cabinet. But basically blaming the vetting procedure, the system, and Mandelson's lies. But as you say, this all comes back to advisors advise, vetters vet. At the end of the day, prime ministers decide, and he made the wrong decision. And if it was the only wrong decision he'd made in his 19, 20 months as the prime minister, you might be a bit more forgiving. But given that virtually everything he's said and done, he's backtracked on, been proved to be in the wrong, has been exposed for having lied, deceived, I think no one's got any. I mean, even many Labour voters, no one's got any willingness to forgive him.
That's right. And I mean, advisors advise, and one of his most important advisors, Jonathan Powell, advised him not to have anything to do with Peter Mandelson. And, the appointment has... there were plenty of people right across the spectrum who have known Peter Mandelson for 40 years. And in every single case, every single part of his life, he's come a cropper. Because he cannot act. He's as bent as a corkscrew. And all of the evidence now abundantly establishes that fact, to have anything to do with him. And what I wonder, Julia, and this is quite an important point, was it in fact because of Peter Mandelson's known relationships with Jeffrey Epstein that he was appointed the ambassador in the first place to the court of a president who had his own links with Jeffrey Epstein? I think that's a fairly...
That's a very, very interesting point. Yeah, but this is the thing, as you say, you know, Jonathan Powell would have known for many years. You, as political editor of The Sun, I remember I worked in the same office. I was in the Evening Standard. We met many, many years ago, and you would have had to deal with Peter Mandelson on a daily basis. My few dealings with him, I don't remember any of them being pleasant. He came on the show, I think, the day after the general election, but I think he didn't this show. I don't think he realised he was coming into the studio with me in it. Otherwise, I know he would have gone, no, thank you very much, because he's never been a fan of mine, and the feeling is very mutual. But this is the thing, his reputation goes back a very, very, very long way. Everyone knew what he was like. He's never met he, like Prince Andrew, never met a dodgy billionaire he didn't like, money grubbing to the core. And you don't even have to have allegations of criminality that he denies now to know that he was unsuitable. The reality is, Keir Starmer ain't going anywhere. He's going to try and get out of he's going to do his lawyerly answers to questions when he's asked in Belfast by journalists about these documents revealed yesterday, cunningly revealed after PMQs, and he thinks that's going to get him out of having to answer questions. I mean, that's how unlight-footed he is as a politician. But do you think the only thing that is, as my callers are saying, the only thing that's keeping him in place right now is basically the people who want to oust him aren't quite ready yet? They'd rather get the local Scottish and Welsh elections out of the way on May the 7th and then make a fresh start then. Do you think that's the only thing that is stopping him being thrown out?
Absolutely, because those people who might succeed would have to have that blood on their hands. I mean, because they're going to do badly in those elections, whoever is the leader, even if there's by some chance someone who is going to end up as a good leader. They're going to have to endure the misery and humiliation of those elections. So why not let Keir Starmer finish up as the walking corpse that he already is, and then bury him after?
Take the full hit. What do you make also, one thing we haven't touched on as much, but I mean, absolutely incandescent when I saw the original documents yesterday, £75,000 payout to Peter Mandelson for being sacked. Again, I'm not a employment tribunal contract expert or anything, but I'm pretty sure if you lie in your job interview and you're sacked for gross misconduct, which is basically what happened to him, you don't get a payout because your contract is null and void at that point. He'd asked for a whopping £547,000 payout. So the civil service were of the view that they got a real bargain by negotiating him down for the reputational damage that his own actions had caused him. But this is taxpayers' money. People are struggling. OK, 75k over, 70 million people is not, it's pennies, not pounds. But it's still yet more profligate handing around like confetti of our taxpayers' money, isn't it?
Well, yes, it is only a few pennies spread across millions. But for many of your listeners and our readers, this is 3 years' average earnings. I mean, this is a lot of money, and you have to think back to the original. You're talking about the £575,000.
547,
Sorry, just say 550 in round figures.
Yes.
That is roughly double the amount of money that he originally borrowed off Jeffrey Robinson to buy the house in an illegal act. I mean, a judge actually went to prison for deceiving his building society in exactly the same way.
Yeah,
that Peter Mandelson,
because he lied to his mortgage. Do you know who wrote the very first article in Londoners' Diary in the Evening Standard about that?
Could it possibly be...
Me! I didn't have a byline on it, and it did actually originally come from Charles Rice, the former political editor of the Standard. But yeah, that first article raising doubts about, well, how on earth, where did he get the money from on his 45 grand MP salary at the time to buy this massively expensive Notting Hill house? And he lied about that as well.
Well, I mean, look, Peter Mandelson cannot actually utter a word that you can take for granted as being true.
Yep.
And he just is a serpentine character. He is actually a bit of a sick joke, really, because, he's known as the Prince of Darkness, the Machiavellian character who used to prowl the House of Commons watching what you were writing. But actually, he was treated by those who knew him as a bit of a joke. And we were somewhat surprised to see just how amazingly people took him seriously in the government, including Tony Blair, as a maestro.
Yeah.
He was just a chancer.
Yeah, the idea that he won the election in '97 for the Tony Blair is utter nonsense. Thank you so much. Always so good to talk to you. Trevor Kavanagh there, the Prince of Lightness and Sunshine, former political editor of the Sun newspaper. Philip Ingram, your response to what he had to say?
Well, the more you think about it, the more you hear about it, and the more you have to question what Keir Starmer's done, but the more you then have to try and question what Peter Mandelson may have over all of them. Because, sticking my conspiracy theorist hat on, there's no way, there's no logic behind why Peter Mandelson has been given this primus inter pares position in the Labour Party and everything else, and is worshipped in the way he is, unless he's got dirt on everyone else.
Yep, that's the only explanation. It really, really is. Philip, thank you very much. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to the peer Baroness Kate Hoey about a very encouraging vote, very tight win last night for peers led by Lord Toby Young of the Free Speech Union, who spoke to him earlier in the week, basically voting to scrap non-crime hate incidents. They cannot be recorded. You can't be arrested for them. That would be a good start, given some 60 people a day face that. We'll talk to Kate Hoey about that up next. This is Talk.
Smash convention.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals
every weekend from 6 a.m. for the stories that matter to you. We talk politics, we talk news, we talk entertainment, we talk about everything that affects your life. There's only one place to start your weekend.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:51 is the time. This is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk right now about those, one of our favourite topics, non-crime hate incidents, which for some reason, some 60 people a day get arrested for by the police, even though, of course, by definition, a non-crime hate incident is not a crime. The clue is in the name. 2 attempts by previous Home Secretaries under the Tories to get these scrapped, an invention of the College of Policing, a completely and utterly woke and captured organisation, have failed. But are we going to finally see the end of them? This after a vote in the House of Lords last night narrowly voted to scrap non-crime hate incidents altogether. Well, let's talk about this with independent peer, former Labour MP, Baroness Kate Hoey. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Well, I know Toby Young from the Free Speech Union was leading this. They spent an awful lot of their time representing people at the Free Speech Union who've been accused of such non-crimes. But tell us how significant this vote is, because there are a lot of votes that happen in the Commons and the Lords that don't actually lead to any change.
Yeah. Well, this was actually debated on Monday night, very, very late. And the way the system works, it wasn't voted on until the early evening last night, then without any debate. And of course, over that time, we saw a lot of presumably pressure being put on by government. And so it ended up, rather than the Lib Dems having said in committee stage that they would be supporting it, they then changed their mind and voted against. So it was really on a knife edge. Yeah. And we won the vote thanks to the really marvellous speeches and work that Toby Young has done.
Well, I mean, 227 to 221. Yeah, I mean, that's extraordinarily close.
That's very, very... a very small margin. Now, of course, the reality is it will now go back as part of the crime and policing bill, and it will go back to the House of Commons. But I hope that the fact that, that the non-elected hereditary peers included House of Lords could actually make this vote for basically to protect freedom of expression will shame the Commons, that they won't try and ping pong it back to us. Yeah. It really is. It's when you think about it, the idea that people sort of, I think the government tried to suggest, well, it didn't really matter to anyone. But if you've had something against you because you've tweeted something, or someone has said that you made something that's a non-crime hate incident, that goes in your record. Yeah. And then if you were applying for any kind of job, not necessarily even in the public sector, this would be looked at, and your whole career could be.
And a lot of people not even aware that they've got these recorded against them. They don't have the heavies turn up on the doorstep and question them, but they don't even know. I did a freedom of information or a subject access request to see whether after Alison Pearson, in fact, it turns out it wasn't a non-crime hate incident she was being arrested for, or questioned about. It was actually an alleged, completely falsely alleged crime. But various people, we all friends, said, well, look, let's all see whether we've got them. I was stunned to discover that I don't have an NCHI recorded against me by the Met Police. I'm actually disappointed, frankly. I think I'm obviously not getting up to no good enough. But Toby Young, in his speech, Lord Young said to the Lords, he said, examples, and again, this is the thing, an NCHI is defined as an incident that falls short of being criminal, so therefore it should have nothing to do with the police, given that they don't investigate actual criminal acts, but is perceived to be motivated by hostility or prejudice towards a person with a particular characteristic. So the perception doesn't even have to be somebody someone could be totally unaware of a comment that is made about someone else, and the other person can say, I heard about that comment, and they can report it, and the police will record it, which is...
And the police don't have to tell you that they've recorded
which is astonishing. But Toby Young pointed out, examples include a man accused of whistling the theme tune to Bob the Builder whenever he saw his neighbour, a woman who said on social media she thought her cat was a Methodist, and 2 schoolgirls who told another girl she smelled like a fish. OK, I'm sure none of these things were very enjoyable for people, but they are hate crimes.
Julia, you haven't mentioned the one about potato. Someone was called potato because they were, Irish, and somebody made a joke about calling them potato. I mean, it's a silly joke, but anyway, that's the sort of thing. And I think what the public have seen is the police spending really quite a lot of time, and we know they've been spending a lot of time in actually checking out some of this ridiculous suggestions. So, when you don't get a policeman coming along when you've been burgled, or you've been knocked down in the street by somebody stealing your mobile phone, this really is ridiculous waste of police time. And just let's hope this is the beginning of the end of it.
I'm just never as hopeful as everyone else about this because, again, we've had 2 Tory Home Secretaries try and get rid of these and ordering the College of Policing not to carry on. But they are a captured institution, as is virtually every Chief Constable. Yeah. You don't move up the ranks in the police forces unless you tick all these boxes. You're obsessed with rainbow lanyards and you're absolutely convinced that the biggest issue in this country is people saying things out loud that are true. I mean, we have a problem in this country with our institutions. Is there any evidence that's going to stop police doing this? Because we know even if someone doesn't end up with a record, even if they don't end up with it being recorded, because this is to ban them from recording it, people are nevertheless intimidated into silence.
Well, the College of Policing has actually been under a lot of criticism, the way they've handled this from the beginning. They have now begun to accept and say that it needs to change. And
there should be more of them.
Yeah, exactly. But the pressure is on there, and I genuinely have to say that the Free Speech Union, which Toby Young coming into the Lords, put in by Kemi Badenoch, has actually been a brilliant way of people to feel that they've got that protection. People are joining up because the FSU has taken numerous cases, as you know, and I just think we have to be absolutely clear that we cannot leave on the statute book. What went through last night now means that it's a statutory obligation that this cannot be kept in.
Well, let's hope it works out.
But who knows?
All I can say is I'm not a fan of the House of Lords, but with you, Toby Young and Claire Fox in it, I am, because thank goodness we've got some people who are speaking out on these things and doing the right thing. Kate Hoey, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much, dude. Philip Ingham, do you have any hope that this is going to put pressure on Starmer over this, when they fundamentally do think that people saying things which, even if they're fact-based, is the problem? Like whether it's the grooming gangs, saying stuff about the grooming gangs is the problem, not the girls being raped, for instance.
Yeah, well, I think Chief Constable should turn around and say, well, it's not a crime, therefore it's not a police matter. We're stretched anyway, and therefore we're not going to deal with it. And the House of Lords has indicated that we should.
There's been some talk that they will do that, but again, it shouldn't be left to the discretion of individual officers or indeed individual Chief Constables.
It should never been a police matter.
But this thing, I find it extraordinary that the Home Secretary cannot just say, you don't do this anymore, and if your force does do this, you're going to be sacked.
Yes, exactly.
I don't understand. The idea that you don't do what your boss tells you, and we talk, well, they're at arm's length. No, the police enforce the laws of this country made by the government and the Parliament that we elect. They've got no sodding business making up their own laws.
But they're, under the current legislation, therefore, they've got no requirement to do anything about this. And this is their woke approach. And it's all about wokeism.
Genuinely, I'd scrap the College of Policing, and I've got to be honest, I would probably sack every single senior police officer and say you need to reapply for your jobs. And if you're obsessed with this lanyard nonsense and wokeness and everything, you're not up to the job. I want you to arrest criminals, and that's all I want you to do, and prevent crime. And if you don't think that's your main job, you're in the wrong job. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and your thoughts, of course, on Mandelson. Does Keir Starmer should he even stay in the job? Do you think he will stay in the job? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Anyone else, that lack of judgment, ignoring the advice they get, would be out on their ear. So why is the Prime Minister still there? Tell me. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's 2 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Very much appreciate your company, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device. Thank you so much for joining us. If you miss anything, we had a rip-roaring first hour, honestly. Go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe, you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, more on Mandelson and that first batch of Mandelson files, which I just think makes it absolutely blatantly clear the Prime Minister has very poor judgment and he lied to the Commons. I don't see how on earth he's still in a job. Certainly Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, and indeed the Liberal Democrats and the Greens, I think, as well, are all saying he has to go. I have a funny feeling that's what most Labour backbenchers also think right now, probably most of his cabinet. But that's because most of them want the job. Love to hear your thoughts on that. Also going to be talking more about what's going on in Iran. We've got the FBI warning of a drone attack by Iran on California. Poland has in the last few moments said they've foiled a cyber attack by the Iranians. This is spreading far and wide. But by the way, this is exactly what Iran was always going to do. So maybe better to take them on before they've got the nuclear weapon. Yeah, maybe that was right. Plus, the Home Office won't reveal how many failed asylum seeker families have actually accepted that £40,000 offer to leave Britain voluntarily. I mean, I think most of us would happily take 40 grand to leave Britain right now. Also, we're going to be talking about the hundreds of GPs who say they've never refused a sick note, often for weeks or months or years off work, over mental health concerns their patients bring to them. A lot of them say they're too afraid to say no. It's just easier to say no. But yeah, it's costing us billions and it's got to stop. We're going to be talking about all of that, plenty more besides on the show. Delighted to say that joining me on the show for the whole 3 hours is Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. Morning once again to you. I'm going to put the question to our audience I've been putting to you, putting to everyone, because we've got a lot of calls on the board. We'll get to as many as we can in the next half hour. Keir Starmer, we now know, I mean, we knew already, but we now know black and white. He ignored warnings from security vetting and his top, closest, most senior aides about Peter Mandelson's close links with Jeffrey Epstein. Known when Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson were kind of best pals, in Peter Mandelson's own words, to be a convicted paedophile. And certainly when he was appointed as our ambassador to Washington by the Prime Minister, absolutely known all the details about the horrific crimes of Jeffrey Epstein, and we knew at the time also it was in the public domain. It wasn't just in an MI5 briefing that Peter Mandelson had stayed friends with Jeffrey Epstein throughout. Sorry, apologies, I've got the old sneeze. I keep doing this when I'm reading out a question. But I want to know, what does this say about the Prime Minister's judgment? Can he remain in the job? It looks like, very clearly, he lied to Parliament. It looks like he's used his lawyer legalese to try and get out of it. In about an hour's time, he's going to be speaking in Belfast, and he's going to face questions and answers. Well, we never get answers from him, but questions from the media. What is he going to say? And is the only thing keeping him in his job, basically, that is the people who want his job, the other members of the cabinet, the Andy Burnhams and the Angela Rayners and others, just aren't ready to take the job, and they don't want to have to take the hit of that, what is expected to be horrific defeat in the local Welsh and Scottish elections on May the 7th. So we stuck with this guy until, well, the results of those elections probably out in total by about the 10th. We stuck with him until then. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. You can also message us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1, standard network rate message. But you knew all that already. Philip Ingram, we're stuck with him, aren't we?
Well, we are until after May the 7th, because I think he is a dead man walking at the moment. I cannot see any way he can survive from this. And if he does, I can see a collapse in the Labour government before the next general election is due, because the country will start to rise up against him. This is unprecedented. I've been on this planet for many, many years, and I've never seen anything quite as bad.
It is so utterly shameful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And shameless.
And we go back and just listen to him calling out Boris Johnson and everything that Boris was doing.
And quite rightly calling
him out.
I've got a load of people on my timeline going, oh, you wanted Boris gone for a piece of cake. No, I wanted him gone because he lied to Parliament and he lied to the public and he locked us down while his mates were all having big parties. That's a different thing.
There's one thing that Keir Starmer and his government is doing better than Boris, and it's lying better and lying more, and you're misleading us
Boris
even
was
more.
used to just lie. As I said to him once, I'm not one of your mistresses. I'm not going to believe your lies. I did say that to his face. I ruffled the hair. But it's true. Don't treat me like one of your idiot mistresses, mate. I'm not going to believe a word you say, and neither should any voter. And I was furious about that. I've always felt very strongly about integrity in our political office, and I've for so many years defended politicians. And people go, oh, they're all liars. MPs are just in it for themselves. Blah blah blah. I don't think that is the case. Actually,
no,
I think most people who go into politics actually they've got a mission. There's something they want to do, and they're good people. They do some really good work behind the scenes. There's a lot of work. All that stuff, PMQs and all that braying. That's
not where the work
that's half an hour of the working week. It's a hard slog of a job if you do it properly. It's a 7-day-a-week job. I've always been very defensive. I was absolutely apoplectic about the MP's expenses. And again, they've been told, we can't put up your pay because the public won't like it, but take an extra 23k in expenses and no one will care. Well, we did care. And we lost a load of people had to resign, loads of people were ousted, people went to prison, and people were saying, oh, for goodness sake, people losing their job over claiming for a telly or a bath plug, whereas, at the time you had the likes of the Italian Prime Minister at the time, Berlusconi, doing, in his, bunga parties and goodness knows what. And I'm like, but I don't want to live in Italy. I want to live in a country where we do expect high standards from our politicians. And if you lie to Parliament, you have to go. And if you're caught in wrongdoing, you have to go. And it seems, that just doesn't happen anymore. Because Boris Johnson, he wasn't ousted. People say by the media. He wasn't ousted by the media. He was ousted by the public who went, no, we will not put up with it. And the MPs realised that he was actually, if they still thought he was popular, they'd have kept him.
And so, one of the tickets Starmer came in on was being more open, more honest, and bringing integrity back into politics again. And he, at every turn, has proven it wrong. And not only has he not brought integrity back into politics, but he's failing at his political decisions because he's having a U-turn every single thing. One.
And this is the thing, again, people might give him the benefit of the doubt if he hadn't basically just... He lies and lies and lies and lies and lies and lies and lies. And again, if you come into office, I don't think when Boris Johnson came into office, people went, "Oh, here's a man of great integrity and personal, his personal life is beyond reproach." Yeah. And this was a man who everyone went, you know what? You'll do if you're going to get Brexit done, and you're not Jeremy Corbyn. Yeah. We wanted to end the chaos of 2019. That's different. Keir Starmer said, I'm quiet, competent, it's managerial, we'll take away the chaos, there's going to be integrity, and there's none of that. There's none of it.
In fact, it's totally opposite. If there was none of it and he wasn't doing anything wrong, then fine, we could
we'd all take a bit of quiet competence, wouldn't we?
Exactly, but he's doing everything opposite, and. He's trying to give that veneer of credibility.
But worse than that, he's doing everything opposite. He's got no integrity. Yeah. He's got no backbone. He's got none of the skills you need to be a prime minister. He's got no beliefs, no philosophy.
And look at the number of ministers he's lost as well.
But he's got none of that. But he preens himself like the sort of moral peacock that he claims to be, as if I spent my life fighting injustice. I spent my life defending violence against women and girls. Oh, but you're point a man who was utterly dismissive of allegations against his best pal, who was known to be a prolific rapist of girls. As I pointed out earlier, the same age as the Prime Minister's own daughter. I do not bring in politicians' children. I don't want them on the leaflets. I don't know why they bring their wives and husbands to work at party conferences and have them kissing them on the stage. I don't want any of that. I don't want them taken on foreign trips. I don't bring my husband to sodding work. He's got his own life. It's weird. Bring your spouse to work day. No one else does this, right? And I never bring in their families, especially their children. I think it's rotten to be a Prime Minister's child or even a royal child. You have this thrust upon you. Yeah. But the Prime Minister Minister gets up in the morning and he has breakfast at the same table as his family, presumably, looks his wife in the eye and his son and his daughter in the eye. The daughter is the same age as the girls who were being raped and beaten and threatened and basically held captive by Jeffrey Epstein for years at a time. And he thought it was okay to appoint someone to the most senior diplomatic role that we have in this country, our ambassador to the US, who was best mates with someone who did that. And this isn't guilt by association. This is if you make excuses for that and you think it's okay, what are you telling people about your values?
The behaviour you walk past is the behaviour you accept.
Thank you.
If you are part of a crowd where one of the members of the crowd murders someone, then you can be prosecuted for murder yourself.
There's a criminal act.
Exactly. And therefore, he is, by appointing Mandelson, by being an apologist for Jeffrey Epstein, throwing himself into the same pot as almost condoning what Epstein's got up to. It's just wrong.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And obviously they thought he was so brilliant. And again, we've got people like Nigel Farage.
Joint enterprise, sorry.
Yeah, joint enterprise, that's the law. You're right. I was trying to think of that as well. But there are lots of criticism from Labour people going, well, what about Nigel Farage? He said that Mandelson would be good for the job, and these documents, interestingly, Peter Mandelson says that Nigel Farage might be quite useful in terms of his links with, all big mates together with Donald Trump. But I mean, look, the end of the day, Nigel Farage wasn't Prime Minister. No. At the end of the day, he wasn't the person who made the decision. And if Nigel Farage was Prime Minister and made that appointment, I'd be saying exactly the same.
The same about him. Yeah, and everyone jumps up and down and says, why are you holding Starmer up and you're not holding Farage up? Well, Farage is the head of a party with less than 10 MPs that hasn't achieved very much apart from what's in the.
Well, they're still ahead of the polls.
In the polls at the moment, it's in there. But
when he's in office, he will be held accountable.
Exactly, he's not even leader of the opposition at the minute. But Keir Starmer is the leader of this country. He is the Prime Minister, and therefore has to be held up to that.
Ignoring the advice of the security services, the head of the Foreign Office.
Well, they didn't even go through the security services properly. If you read through
everything, the vetting is quite shocking.
The vetting's completely shocking.
I think I vetted McLeaner when I hired her more than they vetted Peter Mandelson.
Probably.
I mean, genuinely, I need to see your passport to know you're legally able to work here.
As part of my battalion in Germany, I had a vetting unit. We vetted everyone across the whole of Northwest Europe, and I've seen what the vetting process is.
And what sort of thing would that involve in the military? I mean, and I would like to think, given that the level of stuff that Peter Mandelson could see was such high level, economic, defence, security,
it's military and civilian. They'll have gone in to get him because it quotes this. I can now quote it. Quotes this in the documents that he had to have an enhanced DV. He had to be
enhanced
developed vetting. So it's top secret and above top secret. You had to have another clearance on top of that, which is called STRAP, which gives you access to intelligence from very sensitive intelligence from our allies and from different agencies and all the rest. And he'd had to have clearances above that even.
How do they do that though? Right. Are you looking like every single bank statement for 20 years?
Yes.
You literally have to put up
everything. Bank statements. They will interview your friends. They'll interview people that.
So hold on a minute. So when Peter Mandelson said, "I've no recollection of that 75." Didn't he get 70,000 from?
He'll have had to justify
when he had 70,000 from Epstein, which we knew about a few weeks ago. Okay, in the Epstein files, and Ronaldo, his partner, then I think that went on to be his husband, had 10 or 15,000 to pay for a massage course, a physio course or something, as you do. I mean, really, when your husband's a multimillionaire, really. Yeah. But when he said he has no recollection of that. But he would have, within that last year, have had to produce his bank statements to the security services, where he might have perhaps noticed there was that random payment.
And you go through one of those painful things you go through is the interview where the vetting officers come in and they sit down and they know what you've declared in your forms, because you've got lots of forms to fill out, and believe me, they are piles of them. We have to supply copies of all these documents. They then go off and have done their little background checks and all the rest of it.
Who was this money from?
And they then compare what you've said with what they've got, and then you go into an interview. and this interview can go on for hours and hours.
Do we know that Mandelson actually faced that interview?
No, I don't think so.
Because it does look like he was appointed. Well, basically, from what it sounds like, in December 2024,
they bypassed the vetting process.
He basically leaked the papers that he'd got the job.
Yeah.
So it basically became a fait accompli, and then some of the vetting.
Bypassed the whole vetting process. That in itself, that should be a red flag. That if someone set the conditions to bypass that.
And it was because we know that Jonathan Powell, the Prime Minister's current national security advisor, raised the fact that this was an unusual,
which is in Prime Minister talk is that is an unusual thing to have happened. Prime Minister,
as you said, how very brave Prime Minister. What a courageous decision,
Prime Minister.
But he's not going to go, is he, the Prime Minister, over this?
Well, I think this is the final nail in the coffin, and it's purely because we've got the local government elections coming up. Labour are going to get absolutely trounced in them, and may as well have a clean sweep.
The new leader, the next leader, doesn't want to have to take that.
If I was Keir Starmer, I would be getting my packing boxes in and starting to take the pictures off the wall, because if he's not reading the tea leaves.
Yeah, and it's extraordinary. If Labour don't oust him, that will tell you quite about the quality of people they've got on their benches as well. In terms of his handling of this war in Iran, we discussed a little bit earlier. That's a good laugh from a former senior military intelligence officer. Now, look, a lot of people, the polls seem to show that neither Americans nor Brits are in favour of this war.
Yep.
Our Prime Minister was saying wouldn't even allow our bases in the first week or the first few days to be used Diego Garcia and others to be used for strikes unless they relented when they were defensive strikes after our base in Cyprus was hit. We discussed earlier whether or not that was the right decision by a Prime Minister or not. I am very much of the view that we should preemptive strikes on countries that have declared their intention to attack us and our allies. I don't necessarily trust Donald Trump or Pete Hegseth as being people who go through the detail necessary. For instance, how are you going to protect oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz and things like that, given that it's 20% of the world's oil and gas comes through that route, and you basically have to travel through Iranian waters and you can't get out otherwise, and we know that the Iranians are trying to mine it. They've threatened to do that before. I'm of the view that a preemptive attack actually is going to save the world from much worse trouble. Trump earlier in the week said, look, it's a small price to pay, the oil price hike, but it may be a big price to pay for him at the midterm elections in November, and indeed for many people who are struggling with their bills. Is it a small price to pay?
No, it's a very big price to pay for the world, and we're going to be paying for a long time. Keir Starmer has misled us in his typical lawyerish language that is used. British bases were being used as part of the preparation by the Americans in the run-up to their bombing campaign, through the bombing campaign and afterwards. He turned around and said they couldn't use Fairford and they couldn't use Diego Garcia, and then he changed his mind. There was never an option where the British forces were going to be asked to put bombs on RAF aircraft and fly with the Americans into Iran and drop them. But we did have British aircraft deployed across the Middle East, and flying in joint squadrons, Qatar and elsewhere, and helping to protect those from the very beginning. So he's tried to turn around, and I think he's aiming it at his backbenchers and at the Labour voters to say, look at me, I'm trying to hold Donald Trump to account and say this is illegal and all the rest.
He's walking that tightrope between. But normally you'd be walking a tightrope between people wanting to appear very strong, and Prime Ministers usually rather like a bit of a war because they feel very, very manly. And then he's got his Labour backbenchers and his Labour voters, and they're leeching support to the left, to the Greens, being horrified by this. They're all anti-war. Yeah, well, we're all anti-war until we're punched in the face. And I'm sorry, how many punches do you plan to take from the Iranians before you fight back? But so this is very unusual that actually he is facing that pull on both sides, whereas normally you'd expect being involved in a war would actually pump up your support as Prime Minister.
Well, exactly. Well, yes, but I don't think we should have been involved in the bombing campaign and going in with the Americans
and the
Israelis, because they didn't need us. What we should have been doing is recognising that they were going to go and do that, and we'll have known that for weeks and weeks and weeks beforehand. Made sure that our defences were right around our strategic capabilities that we have in Cyprus that are irreplaceable, and we didn't. And we should look after our closest ally and say, look, we understand what you're doing. We're going to be watching you closely. Keep us at the table so we can keep giving you advice. And yes, feel free to use your bases and everything else, because they're your bases that we're letting you use. And we'd have stayed at the table and would have been able to act as a conscience to understand
just
what's going on.
finally, do you think that the sailing of HMS Dragon this week, arriving in 6 days' time, it was set sail a week after Cyprus had been attacked?
Far too late.
Is it
far
national humiliation?
Oh, complete national humiliation. Macron was laughing at us because the French are there.
The fact that we need the French to support
the French
us.
are there, the Spanish are there, the Greeks are there. It should have been there beforehand, and there's a spat going on inside the Ministry of Defence, because I know the Navy were saying from the end of January, we need to send this. The biggest
so this would definitely have been a political decision not to send it?
Political or a military chief making political, playing politics.
Right,
and that's
which
what
is even worse.
Which is even worse.
11:22 is the time. Great to hear your thoughts on everything there. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You want to talk about Iran. Also, love you want to talk about Mandelson and the just abject lack of good judgment that the Prime Minister has shown. And let's face it, he lied to us when he spoke to Parliament, and he had denied that he'd known. If I'd known then what I know now, I would never have appointed Mandelson. But you did know it then, and you did appoint him Prime Minister. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Can he survive? Should he survive? Tell us what you think. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
The home of common...
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:25 is the time. In just a couple of moments, delighted to say in the studio we'll have Rear Admiral Chris Parry, former Royal Navy commander, find out what he makes of what's going on in Iran and how we deal with the Straits of Hormuz, because you may not care about what's going on in the Middle East, but I tell you what, the Middle East cares about what you pay at the pipes, at the pumps, and you're on the petrol station, but also what you're going to be paying for your energy and indeed everything else if we can't get that oil and gas out of the Gulf. So we'll be talking about that with him in just a few moments. First up, though, let's get to your calls. Lots of you getting in touch about, Mandelson and Keir Starmer, because he thinks it's all about Mandelson. It's not. It's all about the Prime Minister and his terrible judgment and his decision to, and also his lying to Parliament and to us about what he did and didn't know when he appointed Mandelson to the most senior diplomatic job in this country, our ambassador to the United States, in terms of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, who was by then not just a convicted paedophile, he was known to be a very prolific raper of underage girls. girls. And yet, apparently, not that big an issue for the PM, who claims to care about violence against women and girls. Let's talk to Carl, who's in Liverpool, and he wants to have his say. Good morning to you, Carl.
Good morning, Julia.
Hello, my love. What do you want to tell us?
My granddad used to say, how do you know a politician's lying? His lips are moving.
Yeah.
Never has a true word been spoken about a politician as it is now, as this leader of ours, because at every turn since day one he's lied, he's U-turned, he's misjudged situations. America being the latest with Iran, the ship going out far too late. He shouldn't have sent it he shouldn't have just sent it. He should have just kept it, done all the repairs that are necessary, because there's no way that has gone out to sea.
Yeah,
and it's 100%. Now, so moving on to the Mandelson thing, if I may. The fact that he's known about everything and he's still gone ahead and he's ignored the advice shows the complete lack of respect for his own party, for his own for the other parties included. Everyone included in this has been shown a massive lack of respect. The public, and you mentioned something earlier, Julia, about he's got a daughter. We know the calibre of this man because he's allowed a paedophile protector and a friend to be in his party and to go over to America with the biggest job, and he's not battered an eyelid. This is a man who recognised Palestine and whose wife is Jewish. This is a man who allows anti-Semitism on our streets and will bring in a Muslim law, so we can't say anything. We know what side this man is on, and it's nothing to do with the British people. He has been against us from day one. He doesn't care about us. The rape gang scandal is still going on. We have no mention of that. You've got two Pakistani men who beat the crap out of a policewoman in Manchester Airport. We've heard nothing about that.
Well, no, the reason there was a case that went to court, and it's sub judice because there is another case that's going to court, and people are innocent until proven guilty. We need to have that court process. So there's a reason why we don't discuss that. And you know that, Carl.
Yeah, sorry, I do apologise. I just find that the man himself, Julia, to be the biggest liar in politics. And Enoch Powell was lambasted years ago for everything that he said, and it's all coming to fruition. We see it all now. The guy's being proven right, along with many other people. It's just gone on far too long. If he's not resigned by the end of the month, I will be shocked, because the longer this situation goes on with him and he doesn't come out and just grab it by the horns and take responsibility, because that was what a leader should do, fall on his sword and acknowledge the fact that he has done a monumental, such a bad job of being a politician. Mind a leader, just a politician.
He's just so bad at it. I couldn't agree with you more, but I don't think he is going to, unless something else that comes out. Carl, thank you very much. Heartfelt call that. Andrew is in Hertfordshire. Good morning to you, Andrew. What do you want to say?
Good morning. Cracking show, you and Philip. The reality is no one is talking about the victims at all. And what you said was very interesting. Starmer is a lawyer. He goes in and he argues something he knows not to be true, a bit like Harmer saying Jerry Adams is not a terrorist. He argues it, and he doesn't have a conscience about doing it. So when Powell and Robbins told him, don't hire him, he doesn't think like you or I or anybody else or Philip or anyone, right, crikey, this is a bad move. He just thinks, I go against the right all the time because I argue a completely mad point. I don't care. And who suffers? Women and girls. And the thing that's terrifying is, why did Mandelson need to sleep in that flat?
This is the thing that I found utterly fascinating, is how Mandelson, who is a multi-millionaire, well, he was until very recently, all these like Prince Andrew, as he was, these incredibly rich people who apparently can't afford hotels. The rest of us manage.
What was in that flat that he needed, that he had to be there and sleep there? That's the question Starmer, the lawyer, should have asked.
Very interesting.
Why did he go there? Because he knows he's convicted, he's serving time, he has to be there.
Yeah, very, very interesting point, Andrew. Thank you very much indeed. Let's get to cover your texts and tweets as well. Mark says, I'm asking, what does this say about the Prime Minister's judgment? Mark says, this tells us nothing we didn't already know. These corrupt scumbags, he says, have destroyed our country. Owen says, Starmer knew about Mandelson. He thought he could brush it under the carpet and everyone had forgotten. I don't think so. Starmer, says Jane, has awful judgment. He's a grandiose narcissist. Ian says, he never thought he would be found out. Starmer needs to resign. Never-ending lies. John says, Keir Starmer will be known for pathological compulsive lying. He will go down as the one who brought down the Labour Party. And David says he has no judgment, no concern for the consequences and no conscience whatsoever. Disgusting. Wow, people are not holding back. I agree with every single word of that. Up next, we're going to be talking to the former Royal Navy Commander, Dr. Chris Parry, about what is going on in the Middle East, in particular our own contribution and what we can actually do to reopen the Straits of Hormuz. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. I'm going to have trouble right now because I've now got Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer in the studio, joined by Rear Admiral Dr. Chris Parry, CBE. I'm the only one here without a title. Still holding out for Supreme Leader now. He's a former Royal Navy commander. He's also reforms at UK's mayoral candidate for Hampshire, the Isle of Wight and the Solent, and also honorary president of Veterans for Reform. Have I got it all? Have I finished the entire... We've got no time for the interview now. We're going to go back to a break.
Anyway. I've got a blank space for something else as well.
Oh, so, yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. There we are. Chris Parry, let's just ask you first up. Should there be an attack? Should America and Israel have attacked Iran? Was that the right decision?
I think this was a ticking time bomb, to use a common phrase. We either were going to stop Iran getting a nuclear device, or we weren't. And if Iran did get a nuclear device, you have a situation where the nuclear issue isn't really that important. It's the misbehaviour they can get up to underneath it. So when you go back to 2010, for example, North Korea torpedoed a South Korean warship, killed 50 sailors. There was no retaliation because
nothing you can do.
They had nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And so the real danger is if they can sit with that comfort blanket, there's all sorts of outrage they can get up to. And with the way the regime is, ideologically, and indeed in the way they support terrorism, you've got a real problem.
Was it a matter of sooner rather than later?
Absolutely that.
Okay.
And I think, wars occur, I always say this, when you've got windows of vulnerability and windows of opportunity. And let's face it, Iran was very vulnerable after the destruction of its axis of resistance, Hezbollah, the Houthis and Hamas. And America right now is very powerful. And for almost an instant, I don't know how long it's going to last, we've almost got a unipolar moment.
Yeah.
Because the Chinese aren't reacting, the Russians can't react. And so America right now has said, look, we have a window of opportunity. The Israelis need to get rid of this problem, so we're going for it.
And also, interestingly, unity in the Middle East in terms of, Saudi Arabia, the Bahrains, the UAE, and Qatar. seriously, we're done with the trouble that Iran is causing. In terms of the planning and the execution of what America has done, it would appear they didn't really need our help. Was it the right decision of the Prime Minister to refuse last week, the beginning of this operation, the US, the use of Diego Garcia base and elsewhere?
It was a dreadful decision. I mean, I'm not making a political point here. I'm making a citizen point. There is a high level of strategic illiteracy with this government on practically every decision which relates to geopolitics or indeed the employment or threat of the use of force. Now, presumably they're learning on the job. I mean, maybe that's the case. But this was a classic case. They weren't balancing what our strategic interests, in other words, actually keeping on side with the United States.
But surely they would also be taking advice. If you're learning on the job and you're a human rights lawyer, not a defence expert, you would be taking advice from the defence experts in government. We know the Prime Minister doesn't take advice from his vetting experts, or indeed his head of his Foreign Office on who he appoints as an ambassador to the United States. Do you think that they've been ignoring advice from the defence experts in the MOD and elsewhere?
Let me tell you, Julia, when I was in the Ministry of Defence, every politician fancied himself to be a Napoleon.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid without any background or expertise, they think they can make geostrategic and military judgments. And it takes a real force of personality to say to politicians, nope, you're wrong. Yeah. And I really want to keep my job as well. And so I think we've got a case here where the military probably did say, you need to do this in this timescale. And I think it was probably rejected.
Has the Prime Minister undermined our reputation in the world, undermined our close security links with America by not being there when we were asked? Or would that have been a bit, a lot of people accuse Tony Blair of being, George Bush's poodle when it came to the Iraq war? Where do you stand on that?
I think there's got to be a careful balance of our interests and the outcomes that you want. And I don't think that was made. At the moment, the Trump administration is the only show in town. And what they're looking for is reliable allies. They keep saying this. The only good allies are reliable, capable ones. And right now, the only ally they've got that falls into that bracket is Israel. Mm-hmm. We don't, and neither do our European partners. And so you've seen the other European partners stepping up very quickly indeed to say...
And Australia and Canada.
Yeah, and to say we're capable. So we are reliable, and what we're appearing as is very unreliable and very week.
I mean, in terms of HMS Dragon, Type 45 destroyer finally leaving Portsmouth and heading to Cyprus, won't be there for another 4 or 5 days. A week after our base in Cyprus was attacked, the French went in to defend it. I mean, what a national humiliation that has been. I mean, do you see it like that?
It's the worst humiliation I think we've had in the Navy since the Dutch went into Medway and took the Royal Charles back to the Netherlands. It's absolutely ridiculous that we didn't have a ship at high readiness. Let me give an example. Mm-hmm. The day the Falklands were invaded by Argentina, my ship, Antrim, off Gibraltar, was loaded and stocked to 98% of war stocks. We topped up from another ship to 104%, and we were on our way within 6 hours.
Within 6 hours?
6 hours. There were 10 other ships that did the same.
So I know the full task force was able to set sail within 3 days.
3 days, but we were on our way almost on day one. Now,
would that have been an order given by the First Sea Lord? Would that have been an order given by the Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher?
Margaret Thatcher was always very clear. I will give you political objectives. You provide the military means.
I'm not the military expert, you are.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's the best lesson any politician can learn. If they give the political objectives, not the military ones, then things will be okay. And I will take advice on how you achieve those political
Different
objectives.
situation in America where the president is the commander-in-chief and does make those actual final decisions. How much do you trust Donald Trump with, with his aides to be making the right decisions? How do you think he's handled things so far? He keeps saying things like, there's been a bit of querying about what the war objectives are. Although again, regime change has quite clearly not been one of them. That if the regime does change, that's great, but that's not a requirement. But in terms of him saying the war has been won, we've won but not enough, it's all over, Iran's capability is completely destroyed. Oh, and here they are bombing ships in the Strait of Hormuz and stopping oil getting out. 20% of oil and gas in the world coming through that strait, basically in Iranian waters. What do you make of how he's handling this and his own aides?
You can't listen to President Donald Trump and expect to hear anything like the truth. He's not even trying to tell the truth. He's trying to confuse you. It's a method of sort of doing information warfare in many ways.
He is deliberate, or is he just speaking off the cuff and just talking nonsense?
He knows exactly what he's doing. If you read The Art of the Deal, I know you've read The Art of the Deal, he says...
I've not read The Art. He didn't even write Art of the Deal.
But what he says very clearly is, I will track you with my right hand, I'll outrage you, I'll amuse you, I'll say anything to get your attention, and I'll do what I want with my left hand.
Except he hasn't done very good deals. He never got that North Korea deal. He didn't do a lot of good deals when it came to tariffs and things like that. Is there any evidence, other than using the huge American military might to basically take on an adversary like Iran that is posing a threat not just to Israel but to all of its Middle Eastern neighbours, as we've seen? Even talk about drone attacks on California. There's been a cyber attack attempt on Poland. I mean, they are they are a threat to the world. Other than that, I mean,
there's a bigger agenda, Julia.
This is about China, isn't it?
It's about China.
Explain this.
Yeah. Okay. So look at Venezuela. Look at Iran. If you manage to actually deal with both those regimes, you have domination of 33% of the world's oil supply, and most of what goes out of Iran and the Gulf goes to China. You will be able to hold China to ransom on energy.
Bearing in mind, a lot of the other oil supplies come from America, so they would have
Russia, of course, and Russia, of course, is at peak capacity at the moment. So it's domination of the energy markets, so that they can put pressure on China. And if you read their national security strategy, they say quite clearly, our pacing threat is China. Our pacing scenario is homeland security.
This is simply a stepping stone to basically undermining China's ability to wage war itself, whether it's against Taiwan. And again, this is about control of the shipping lanes of the world.
Julia, what they've said is, look, the world island, which is Eurasia, is dominated by Russia, China, Iran and North Korea.
Yeah.
The maritime world is dominated by the United States and the free world. And
it used to be us, folks. It used to be us.
And in between are the areas of conflict, which we're arguing over. And what President Trump is saying is we're going to dismantle this axis of autocracy, and we're going to drive in through Iran and detach Iran away from China and Russia. They've tried to detach Russia from China. That's not worked with Ukraine. Now they're going for Iran. And so what you're seeing is the maritime world essentially going into Eurasia and saying, we're not letting China dominate this.
OK. And what do you make of what's been happening overnight, the last few days, the bombing of tankers and cargo ships in the Straits of Hormuz? And again, this is incredibly narrow strait. Those widest point is narrowest point is 24 miles. Yeah, sure. I was just going to say, I'm sure you have, but it might be an understanding that actually when it looks like it widens, it's not. It's too shallow, and basically you're basically having to sail up the Iranian coast. We've seen them trying to lay mines.
You can go ashore on the southern side, which is the top of Oman on the peninsula. There's no question about that. But you're within range. You're right, Julia. So I mean, it's the obvious tactic. Back in the 1980s, in the Iran-Iraq war, the Iranians said, "Look, we're going to shut the Straits of Hormuz." So the Americans flagged every tanker as American and escorted them through. Now the Americans have pretty much destroyed most of Iranian capability. And what they do have has been delegated down to unit commanders. There's no central control, which is why you're seeing all these sporadic attacks in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, in Kuwait and elsewhere. This is local commanders.
And this was something that the Ayatollah Khomeini deliberately did, so in the event of his death, that would be what happened.
And you know what the Americans will do, they have to really, so that the world economy doesn't actually go into spasm, is they're going to have to secure exports coming out of...
And can they do that?
Yes, easily.
And by
simply destroying anything that gets in the way. They've already dealt with quite a lot of the mine laying capability. You can still lay mines from cabin cruisers and ferries and things like that, so they might have to deal with that. But frankly, the Americans have more than enough firepower, especially with their allies, to be able to deal with this.
OK. Let me also ask you about news today. I mean, there's been lots of talk about this brand new Ayatollah, the son of the data Ayatollah. I mean, they had an interim one as well. I mean, they go. I did a poll. Apparently, people thought he would last a week, but this is Mujtaba Khomeini. I said an hour a day a week. People were very generous and said a week.
He's already been injured, of course.
Well, exactly. He's not been seen, and it is believed that actually the 56-year-old was actually injured at the same time as his father, his mother, and his wife. And I believe one of his children as well were also killed. But by all accounts now, it's claimed that he is actually in a coma and has actually lost at least one leg, and that would explain why he's not been giving speeches. There was a speech put out. It turns out the whole thing was AI. What do you make of this?
Well, I think anybody who's put up as the supreme leader right now is probably not the person pulling the strings.
Yeah.
I mean,
although it was said that he was putting the strings behind his aged father.
I don't even think that was the case. I think the Larijani clan is pulling strings in in Iran right now. If I'm with the Americans right now, I'd be probably making the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps an offer they can't refuse and say either...
But they have done. That was done before, wasn't it? Just basically, if you want to...
Well, we'll pressure them a bit more and see what happens. Either you're going to be part of the solution or you're going to be a problem. I mean, it's like saying in Nazi Germany, the SS has got to come over to our side before actually this will settle itself.
Yeah.
And that's the nature of it. They're so embedded in society and the economy, they are crucial to any settlement.
Yeah. How do you think this ends and how quickly?
So I think there are three outcomes. Either there is capitulation by the regime that says we get it, and the rest of the population says we're going to come towards the free world, because that's what 70% of the population probably want. There's one where actually the military operation doesn't succeed and the regime survives. That's very dangerous, I think, for the world situation. If that is the case. But
at least they've not got nuclear weapons for now, and they've had their military capability massively curtailed.
But they can probably restore that with the aid of China and things like that. There's a third scenario which says that essentially you devastate them as they have been, you quarantine them for the sake of your golf partners and everybody else, put a fence around them and say, don't you dare breathe.
Don't touch, don't be a problem.
And put them into quarantine.
Are you unhappy about Nigel Farage, your party leader? Now you are a Reform UK mayoral candidate. Him being accused of basically flip-flopping by the Prime Minister at PMQs on this, saying, we shouldn't get involved, we should have been involved. I mean, he's not been quite as sound on this as perhaps you would have hoped, I've thought. I think Mr Farage was probably speaking at the time before he saw the opinion polls saying it was unpopular.
Well, no, with the knowledge he had at the time, and everybody does that. And of course, when the facts change, your opinions change, and I think that's exactly what he did in that circumstance, which is good. No, it's good.
That was an interesting political answer there. Listening to all that, Philip Ingram, just in terms of his Chris Parry's analysis, anything you'd like to add or disagree with?
No, I agree with everything Chris has said. The one thing I'd add is in your second scenario that comes in, the most worrying thing, if elements of the regime exist and the capability hasn't been properly destroyed, is Iran is the biggest global sponsor of terrorism. And what we were likely to see is the export of terrorism for revenge across all of our countries. And we've already seen people arrested in the UK doing reconnaissance against Jewish targets.
Okay. Just finally, I must ask you, Chris Parry, a little birdie has just told me that you were at university with Peter Mandelson.
Yes, I was, and Tony Blair. And Benazir Bhutto and Mel Smith.
The full works. Okay, Oxford.
Yes.
Right. So just you're made a guess. Chris, what do you make of the Mandelson affair right now?
I think
From what you know of him,
I think it was a death foretold. I think Peter Mandelson at 19 was simply, the boy was father to the man. Yeah. To quote Wordsworth,
he was always the Prince of Darkness.
I think he was a sort of Pasha of Darkness at Oxford.
Very interesting. Great to have you in the studio. Goodness knows what you're still going to get up to during the break. But up next, we're going to be talking to the Economic Centre for the Spectator, Michael Simmons, about migrants getting 40k to leave the country and sick notes for everybody, because GPs just won't say no. That's up next. This is Talk.
current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up. I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:52 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and thank you very much for joining me. Let's talk right now about, well, you know, basically all our money just being given to people who are either swinging the lead or have no right to be here in the first place. Let's talk to economics editor at The Spectator, Michael Simmons. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start right now with this 40 grand we discovered in the last few weeks that's going to be paid by the, us, taxpayers, by the Home Office on our behalf, to asylum seeker families who basically can't stay here, should be deported but won't go, and basically to persuade them to go. There's been some questions asking, well, how many families have actually agreed to accept this money and gone? And the Home Office won't tell us. Why?
Yeah, so as you say, the government's just refusing to say how many people have taken this money. And I think there's 2 possible reasons for that. Both of them are not very good. On the one hand, it may be that it's just not worked and nobody's taken the money and the government are embarrassed about that. But I think the more worrying scenario is that they've realised that maybe this was a bit of a mistake. And what they've actually done is just added another pull factor to coming to this country. Yep. Because despite everything that's going wrong in this country, there is a reason why so many people come here. And it's because we're more generous than many places in Europe. Yeah. And this is another advertisement to say, you already want to try and come here. And if it doesn't work out, don't worry, you'll be compensated 40 grand. So there may be a bit of, oh no, maybe we just added another.
And bearing in mind, 40 grand is above the average salary for someone in this country. 40 grand to someone who's coming from, you know, Afghanistan or Eritrea is basically makes you a millionaire.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a life-changing amount of money. And so people might think, well, I've got to pay 10 grand or whatever it is to the people smugglers to get across the channel. And then...
it's cheaper than that. Capitalism has worked really well. It's only £1.5 grand to get across the channel now. It's a bargain.
Well, and there you go. So potentially, they then make their asylum claim. If they're rejected, they've made a net profit of 39 grand, which, as you say, in many of the countries that these people are coming from, that's going to make them very, very rich when they are returned.
It's just extraordinary, isn't it? And how dare they offer our money like that? And now, you know, they give away 75k to Mandelson for getting sacked. So why would we be surprised? And how dare they refuse to tell us? That's the outrageous bit. It's our sodding money. We want to know. And it is extraordinary the sums that are being spent on asylum seeking and housing migrants in the UK. 1/5 of the UK's total aid budget, which is just extraordinary, is spent on housing migrants in the UK, according to a new report by the aid watchdog, the Independent Commission for Aid Impact. Someone else we're paying for, by the way. They're saying it poses a serious risk to value for money. Yeah, do you think?
Yeah, well, exactly. And this is because of a technicality about how we're allowed to account for foreign aid. It means that in the first few years that someone's here from a country that we may give aid to, then we can assign the kind of budget we spend on putting them in a hotel or army barracks or whatever into the foreign aid budget. And it's good that we know about this now so that, people can criticise it. But I think that that's maybe not the motivation behind why they've made this report, because what I think they've also called for is it to be separated out, because obviously the foreign aid budget is meant to be coming down as a share of GDP. And I think people who are supportive of this spending will say, well, no, you shouldn't be able to say this is foreign aid. We need to be able to fund Nigerian spy Spice Girls without signing it to this, so they'll want the creation of two separate budgets.
Yeah, I mean, it's extraordinary, and every attempt they have to hide this, we're going to find it out because there are enough people now who are exposing this stuff. On the other end, I mean, you talked about how we're far too generous to people coming to this country who often have no right to be here, and that's one of the pull factors. There's also a big pull factor for not working at all, the pull factor at the GP. And this is a survey by BBC. They sent it to more than 5,000 GPs in England, asking if they'd ever denied a patient a sick note. I remember my mum was a GP, and she had patients who'd walk in and go, "Oh God, it's you. I'm not going to get a sick note, am I?" And she'd be going, "No, you're not." But most of these sick notes, it would appear, when they even bother saying what the reason is for, are of course for altogether now mental health problems. But hundreds of GPs has basically said they've never refused to sign a sick note for a patient complaining of mental health issues, even when there's no evidence whatsoever, because basically it's easier. They're worried about, they'll get shouted at, they'll have to argue with them. They literally just sign the sick note and let them go. Of course, these sick notes, they're not for a week. Often these people are using the sick note to claim benefits, which they're then on for the rest of their life.
Yeah, absolutely. Many people, it's, as you say, it's not a sick note. It's a license to never work again. And I'm glad the BBC have revealed this.
I'm surprised.
Yeah. Whenever we have this conversation, I think GPs get off a bit lightly. And, we always say they're under a staggering amount of pressure. They only get 5 minutes per patient. But I think they do have some responsibility here. I mean, there was another survey a few years ago that asked a similar question, and it was about diagnosing people with depression and giving out antidepressants. And it was something like 82% of GPs said that they prescribed a drug, antidepressants, even if they didn't think there was actually anything medically wrong.
Which is outrageous.
And I think actually, obviously, the government has the bulk of the blame for creating the benefit system that incentivizes people not to work in this way. But actually, GPs need to stand up. And if they really think someone is fit to work and isn't actually ill, they need to stand firm with it.
I've certainly, people I know, the number of times that GPs have offered antidepressants totally and utterly inappropriately to people I know. Someone grieving for a lost family member. They're not depressed. They're grieving. You don't need an antidepressant for a perfectly normal, appropriate human emotion. It is quite extraordinary. I must ask you, just very briefly, how concerned are you for our economy in terms of the oil price, what's happening in Iran, the Straits of Hormuz and the like right now? Just how worried should we be?
I think we need to be fairly worried, and a bit more worried today than we were yesterday. I mean, yesterday we kind of saw things improve. The stock market looked a bit better. Oil prices were going down. But today they've shot back up again. We're going to get the next Bank of England rates decision next week.
That's not going to be good.
Certainly not going to be cut. They're probably going to be held. Yeah. And I think the worry is going to be in July, because if energy prices stay up, July is the next time that the energy price cap might go up. And if things are how they are now, then all our bills are going to get a lot more expensive.
Well, on that happy note, happy Thursday, everybody, from Michael Simmons, economics editor of The Spectator. Thank you very much indeed for that. Going to take a quick break. Going to hear more from Philip Ingram, who's still with me in the studio. We're going to be hearing from Labour peer, former government minister under Tony Blair, as was Peter Mandelson, of course, Lord Foulkes, on those Mandelson files. Why, indeed, the outgoing Director General of the BBC, Tim Davies, says the BBC has no right to exist if it's not delivering value. Well, it's not. So why is it still in existence? This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much, Steve, for joining me. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you very much indeed for being here. If you've missed anything from the show already, oh, well, what were you thinking? Rip-roaring show so far. You can go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe. Never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, more on those Mandelson files. How does the Prime Minister survive, given that he knew there was, quote, a reputational risk over Peter Mandelson's Epstein links when he appointed him as our ambassador to the US? Why the outgoing BBC boss Tim Davies says the broadcaster has no right to exist unless it proves its value. Well, given that it's rather more expensive to pay for the BBC licence fee than it is to get your Netflix account, and if you never watch the BBC, does it prove its value? Plus, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, he was in the news a little while ago, wasn't he? One of our richest men, most successful entrepreneurs. He has urged Ed Miliband to reverse his decision to block North Sea gas development. What with, what's going on in the world at the moment, it might be a good idea if we had some of our own gas and oil reserves on tap, wouldn't it? Oh, silly, silly man, understanding these things, eh? What will ever happen next? All of that coming up. Plenty more besides. Delighted to say still with me is Philip Ingram, MBE. We've just got one person with an honour in the studio right now after our previous guest has left, Chris Parry. But Philip is a former senior military intelligence officer joining me throughout the show. Before we go to our next guest, Lord Foulkes, a former Labour minister, we're talking about Keir Starmer ignoring warnings from security vetting and his top aides, including his national security advisor, about Peter Mandelson's close links with Jeffrey Epstein, his best pal, before he appointed him as ambassador to the US. This isn't stuff that A, wasn't on the front pages of some newspapers, B, wasn't known to everybody, and C, was something that Peter Mandelson was denying or pretending had not actually happened. There was clear evidence of this, and yet the Prime Minister told us categorically that Prime Minister's questions a little while ago, quite some time ago now, before he sacked Mandelson, if I'd known then what I know now. But these documents show that he did know then what we all knew then and now. What does this say about the Prime Minister's judgment? Kemi Badenoch has called for him to stand down, basically said that it's up to Labour backbenchers to force him from office. I think pretty much to a man and a woman on the messages and the calls we've got so far, that's what you think. It's certainly what I think. Absolute lack of judgment. He's lied to Parliament, he's lied to the public, he's just not fit to be in that job. On top of all his other failures, I want to know what you think though. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate altogether now. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. Philip, you like Claire said, you don't join in. I'm going to start insisting you all just sing it along with me. Philip, we know that the Prime Minister is going to be speaking in the next hour, we believe, in Belfast. He's going to face questions. I mean, he doesn't answer questions at PMQs. Yesterday, he answered completely different questions from the ones being asked him at PMQs. Do you think that the only reason he's surviving this is because basically everyone is just waiting for these local Welsh and Scottish elections to get out of the way, and that is the only reason why there isn't a challenge to his leadership today?
Yeah, 100%, because the Labour Party know that if the challenge is leadership today, it's going to make the local elections even worse, and especially the elections in Scotland and Wales. And those are the ones that they will be really focusing on.
They were hoping. In Wales, they'd been in charge of the government, and in Scotland, a year ago in the polls, they looked like they were going to take over from the SNP.
They're going to take back from the SNP. It looks as if the SNP are probably going to get an even bigger majority, and Plaid Cymru may take over Wales, and that will be a massive blow to the Prime Minister, and he will go at the end of that. Nobody wants to come in as a new Prime Minister and take the sort of failure that's going to come with that and the fallout that's going to come with it. So they'll pile everything on top of him, and then he'll be pushed out after it. He'll try not to. He'll try and lie and talk and manipulate his way out of it. But if he does
he genuinely doesn't think he's done anything wrong, does he? That's, I think, the thing I find extraordinary. Yeah. I don't think he actually believes he's done anything wrong. Or indeed Peter Mandelson.
Yeah, the other worrying thing is, who's going to take over from him? There isn't someone sitting in the wings who's got that sort of
I'm hoping for Ed Miliband.
Ed Millie was.
As we all should.
Ed Millie was, yes.
I'm telling you, it will be a roller coaster of a ride for the week before our country implodes. Yeah, well, but it's going to be a fun week.
The lights would go out in that
quite
week.
Literally.
Yeah, quite literally.
Yeah, but anyway, on that note, right, let's go to our next guest. We'll get more from Philip Ingram, get your calls as well. Keep them coming in. 0344 499 1000. Lord Foulkes joins us now. He's a Labour peer. He's a former minister under Tony Blair, as indeed was Peter Mandelson in his time. Lord Foulkes, thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Great.
How are you?
Very well indeed. Great to talk to you. I mean, I'm very well, apart from the fact that I know we've got a country run by a man who's simply got no integrity whatsoever and appointed a man with no integrity whatsoever. Do you think that, I mean, we know Peter Mandelson had to be ousted from his job. We've seen those documents now showing what the Prime Minister knew when he appointed him. Should the Prime Minister go as well?
Of course not. You've made up your mind. You say he's got no integrity. You're completely wrong on that. I know him well. He, for example, made a clear decision not to join the Americans and the Israelis attacking Iran. That was the right thing to do.
What's that about integrity? What's that got to do with integrity?
Well, he made the right decision.
That's not integrity.
You're talking about decisions on Peter Mandelson. He made the right decision on that.
Wait. He made the right decision when he appointed him or when he sacked him?
No, I said he made the right decision in relation to not attacking Iran. As far as Peter Mandelson is concerned, it's very clear he made the wrong decision and he's apologised for that, and he sacked him.
He said he sacked him because he said he'd been lied to, and he said that if he'd known then what he at the point when he appointed Mandelson as our ambassador to the US, and when he knew now at the time when he sacked him, he would never have appointed him. The documents released in that first tranche of Mandelson files yesterday make it very clear he absolutely did know then what he claimed not to know. The vetting, such as there was vetting, very clearly showed proof that Mandelson was still friends with Jeffrey Epstein after he was a convicted paedophile. We certainly knew about his relationship, pretty much up to his death, when we had all these allegations against him. He'd stayed in his home, called him his best pal.
We know that. We all know that. Julia, we all know that. You knew that at the time. So did.
But the Prime Minister said he didn't know that.
Look, you ask a question.
I hadn't finished my question.
Why do you keep interrupting?
No, I hadn't finished my question. I'm saying, Lord Foulkes, I'm saying that you said he made the right decision because he sacked him. I'm saying, but when he said that he didn't know then what he knew now, these documents prove he did know then. The vetting proves that he did know then. So he lied to the public and he lied to the House of Commons about that.
That's not a question. That's a statement, by the way. And he didn't lie. And you knew then, and so did Nigel Farage. And Nigel Farage, for example, wait a minute, said it was an inspired appointment.
Yes.
And you didn't oppose it. A lot of people thought he was the right man.
I spoke about it on air, actually, when I did speak about it, and I was critical of having Mandelson back. Yes, I was.
You keep interrupting people.
But Lord Foulkes, you've made a statement that's untrue.
Julia, why do you invite people on if you know everything?
No, I know what I know, Lord Foulkes.
Why don't you listen?
Lord Foulkes,
why don't you listen?
I will listen when you make a statement that is not true, as in I didn't speak up about it. I did. That is untrue, and I'm correcting you.
Right, and I'm correcting you because Nigel Farage said it was an inspired appointment.
He did.
I can't remember you or anyone else saying it wasn't an inspired appointment because they thought, and a lot of people thought, he was the right man.
I never thought he was the right man. If Nigel Farage was in office, and I think Nigel Farage was wrong to have said that, and if he was in office and he'd made that appointment, I would be making exactly the same criticisms of him. I've got a very, very strong track record of holding to account any politician of any political hue when I think they've done wrong.
So why don't you stand for Parliament, Julia, if you're so clever?
Well, you have to be. Oh, so only people who run for Parliament are so clever.
I just wondered if you're so critical of everyone, including the Prime Minister and now Nigel Farage, why don't you? If you're so wonderful, why don't you stand for Parliament? And then you would have the power to make decisions.
No, actually, most MPs don't have the power to make decisions. Actually, I've not stood for Parliament, but I've got to be honest with you. I don't think you're right. I think I've actually got more influence doing the job I've got right now. To be honest with you.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I absolutely do. OK, well, no offence, you're in Parliament, but you're not currently elected, are you? But, we're still,
Well, I was elected for 26 years.
You were, but you're not currently elected, yet you still have a say over what happens in our country. Let's come back to the point.
If you want my view on the House of Lords, I'll give you that.
Okay.
I'm in favour of replacing the House of Lords with a Senate of the nations and regions, elected by the Scottish, Welsh Parliaments and the regions.
Fair point. And I would certainly be very open to those sort of reforms. Let's get back to the matter in hand rather than bickering, which I'm sure is very dull for my audience. Lord Fawkes, you say that the Prime Minister didn't lie. You're saying that he made the right decision. Well, no, if he did lie when he told us that he didn't know then what he knew now at the point when he sacked him, and the evidence suggests that it proves that he absolutely did know what he knew when he sacked Lord Mandelson.
No, it doesn't.
Does that not mean he did lie to Parliament?
No, you're wrong. He didn't know when he appointed him the information that he got subsequently, which enabled him, or which allowed him, or made him decide to sack him.
Which information was that?
That was information that he didn't have at the time about the extent of the engagement that Mandelson had.
Of the friendship. But he did. That was in the vetting documents.
No.
We've seen that in black and white.
No, you haven't. It was exactly
I can read. Apparently I'm clever enough to be able to read, if not to stand for Parliament.
But you're wrong. You're wrong.
What do you say you're wrong? It's in black and white that he was warned about this close relationship. And the vetting document included information about the JP Morgan report about Mandelson staying at Jeffrey Epstein's home in New York while Jeffrey Epstein, after he'd been convicted, while he was in prison, serving time for soliciting an underage girl for prostitution. The Prime Minister knew that because it was presented to him. So that was the information that he claimed he didn't know.
No, he didn't know the extent of the relationship between Mandelson and Epstein at the time when he appointed
He didn't know that they were such close friends, even though we're talking about him staying in someone's home after they were convicted of a paedophile crime.
No,
How many people do you stay in the homes of that you don't really know very well?
I don't.
No, exactly. So you only stay in the homes of a close friend, don't you? So that was proof that he was a close friend. So the Prime Minister lied.
But he knew that. He knew that. You knew that. Everyone knew that at the time.
Including the Prime Minister, who claims he didn't.
No, he did. He did know that. He didn't. There are other aspects of the extent of the relationship that he didn't know.
Such as?
No.
You're telling me what I do or don't know. What, such as?
They're in the files. They're absolutely in the files.
What about the vetting procedure? What about the advice from the Permanent Secretary at the Foreign Office, the Prime Minister's own appointed advisor, his National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, who, of course, would have worked with Mandelson in the Blair years in Number 10, who knew him very well, and his warnings. Why do you think the Prime Minister ignored the warnings from security vetting, from senior civil servants, from his own National Security Advisor, that this wasn't the right appointment? Why did he do that?
Well, I don't think it was the right appointment, but he thought that it was the right appointment.
But why did he think that?
Because he was the right person to deal with a strange man who is now currently president of the United States.
The Mandelson was uniquely equipped to be able to deal with Donald Trump.
Not uniquely, but he thought that he had the right kind of approach to dealing with someone as unpredictable and as difficult as Donald Trump.
There was no one else in the country, no one at the Foreign Office, no one at all who could do that job, who didn't come with all that baggage, who hadn't been sacked for 2 previous jobs for lying.
I think George Osborne was considered, and a number of other people were considered.
And
but he thought that, and a number of other people, as I say, Nigel Farage said it was an inspired appointment, and a lot of other people.
Yeah, I think Nigel Farage was wrong, but Nigel Farage isn't the Prime Minister.
And Kemi Badenoch didn't challenge it at the time. Now she's challenging it, but she didn't challenge it at the time.
I think there was quite a lot of criticism at the time, actually. I think you're misremembering this.
She didn't. You may have done, Julia, but she certainly didn't.
A minute ago you told me I hadn't. You were correcting me on that.
But you corrected me. You corrected me.
Think here. Look, I've met Lord Mandelson, and anyone who's met Lord Mandelson knows Lord Mandelson. It was called the Prince of Darkness for a very good reason. He's a slimy, nasty little money-grubbing, nasty little piece of work. Everyone's known that for 20 20 years, and his link, I think I remember saying on air, his links with Chinese business alone meant that he was unsuitable for that role. Do you think it's tenable for a man who came into office, the Prime Minister, back only in July 24, to say that he was, ending the chaos, he was bringing a return to integrity to Number 10 Downing Street, to still be in office after he thought it was okay to appoint a man who was best mates, best pals in his own words, with a man who was a convicted paedophile, who was prolific rapist and abuser of girls the same age as the Prime Minister's own teenage daughter.
And he's apologised for making the appointment. And Mandelson is a money grabber. You're right, he asked for £500,000. He got 75,000.
Should he have got that?
No, he should pay it. He should pay it back. Either that or give it to a charity. Everyone has said that. The minister said that in the dispatch box yesterday.
Someone signed it off. I don't understand why he was entitled to a penny, given that he apparently lied in his job interview.
Neither do I, but the minister explained it yesterday that they were worried about being taken to an industrial tribunal.
But an employment tribunal that undoubtedly Mandelson would have lost. So why not? If I were the civil service boss or I was the Prime Minister, I'd say bring it on, Mandy.
How do you know he would have lost the employment tribunal?
Because he was sacked for gross misconduct, to all intents and purposes, because he lied in his job interview, according to the Prime Minister, unless, of course, the Prime Minister lied to us.
But there are legal costs in an employment tribunal.
I would rather, as a taxpayer, pay the legal costs than I would a payout.
The thing is, Julia, you've got a vendetta against Keir Starmer, and you're using any opportunity. Of course you have. And you have got that vendetta. And any opportunity you get. He made a great decision in relation to the war. You were talking about the war earlier.
Great decision?
Yes.
In what way?
Not to get involved with America.
We are involved. We are involved. Well, our military base in Cyprus was bombed.
These are defensive actions. He didn't get involved in the original attack on Iran, which is resulting in now the oil prices going up, which is resulting in the terrible problems that we're now creating, which is resulting in 170 children being killed.
Around 100, yes. Well, again, in a moment, I have to say, the Iranians killed more of their own children in one day when they were gunning down protesters.
Oh, I know that, and we were, everyone, including you and me, were critical of that. But that doesn't justify the attack that the Americans and the Israelis.
Why doesn't it? Wait, hold on a bit. What justifies the attack by the Americans and Israelis is the fact that Iran has basically declared war and has instigated terror attacks in America, across the Middle East, across Europe, certainly on Israel. They have funded the terror attacks by Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Hamas. They've been funding that and spearheading that for the last 20, 30 years.
And they're still attacking.
No. So in what way is it unreasonable then for the Americans, the Israelis, to say that's enough now, and if they get a nuclear bomb, as they are trying to get, they're going to be even more of a danger. We're going to have to deal with them now rather than later.
Have we dealt with them? Have we succeeded? Has this attack succeeded?
Well, let's ask Churchill that in late 39, shall we?
I'm asking you that. Has it succeeded?
June 1940, after we took over in May.
Has it succeeded?
Wars don't normally... Did we have the Falklands back that quickly?
No, but do you think it's going to succeed? Do you think it's going to succeed? The price of oil...
I think anything that cuts the threat from the Iranians to their neighbours in the Middle East and to the world is a good thing. Yes, I would say that would be a success.
But it isn't doing that, is it?
Isn't it?
No.
Wasn't it? When you're preventing them from developing a nuclear weapon, you're taking out a lot of their missiles and their ability and their leadership. They are still attacking, but the number of drone attacks and missile attacks has massively gone down every single day.
Well, let's see the outcome of this war. I'm not convinced that it is going to succeed in the way
What's the alternative?
The Americans think it's going to do, because it isn't, because the problems are going to continue. That's 90 million people in this in that country. They've adopted a new leader. They're still attacking the countries around them. I think.
What's the alternative?
The alternative, which was what was happening before, was diplomacy and negotiations.
So Kremlin negotiations left the regime in power and able to develop weapons and to foment those attacks on Israel and elsewhere, and 20 foiled terror attacks in Britain alone in recent years, according to our security services. That's fine by you, is it?
No, and the security services have done well by by arresting people recently.
They miss one. And then how many people are you willing to have killed? Whether you want to trust Donald Trump or you trust the particular methods, or you might question the timing, is it not the right thing for the military leader of the West to take on a threat to basically, let's face it, world peace?
Well, you mean like Russia?
Well, I would love it if America took on Russia. But sadly...
Well, you want a war with Russia now, do you?
We are at war with Russia. We're already at war with Russia. We're supplying weapons to Ukraine, who are fighting Russia.
I'm glad we are supporting the
Ukrainians. We're already at war with Russia.
But it's the brave Ukrainians that are fighting Russia.
Come back to my point, though. What's the alternative in terms of Iran? You can disagree with the timing, etc., and the tactics. What's the alternative? You're saying we're just carrying on negotiating with radical Islamic lunatics.
Yes. Yeah. No, diplomacy and negotiation.
How do you negotiate with lunatics?
Well...
No, really, it's a serious question. How do you negotiate with people who believe that, the end of the world is nigh and that destroying the West is going to be the coming of, their version of the Messiah? How do you negotiate with those people?
Is there a bigger lunatic than Donald Trump?
Yes, the Ayatollahs of Iran. Yes, 100%.
Well, it's close. It's a close run thing.
No, it's not a close run thing. That's a nonsense thing to say.
You think Donald Trump is the epitome of intelligence and
but I don't think he's as insane as an Islamic radical Ayatollah. I don't think that's that controversial a statement, Lord Falls.
I think they're both. I think you're right.
You think they're as bad as each other? You think an Iranian Ayatollah who's slaughtered in just 2 or 3 days 30 to 40,000 of young people in his own country just for basically saying don't want to wear a headscarf, would like to have some freedoms in our country? You think that person who's instigated war, supported the October the 7th massacre and everything else? You think that Donald Trump and that Ayatollah pretty much morally the same?
In different ways. I would be critical of each of them. And
really? You're saying those are in some way morally equivalent?
No, I didn't say they were morally equivalent.
I'm asking you the clear question. The answer to the clear question is no.
I didn't say they were morally equivalent.
You said they were... You said they were equally as bad and they were equally as mad.
They are mad, yes. Well,
you can not like Trump. That's fair enough. There are plenty of criticisms that can be made of Trump, and I completely agree with many of the criticism. But the idea that in any way he's as mad or as bad as the dictators of an Islamist extremist regime, that's a nonsense thing to claim, and I would say an immoral thing to claim.
I didn't claim it. I mean, we can talk about Putin. We can talk about all sorts of other people.
Is Trump better or worse than Putin? Come on.
It's a silly question.
No, it's not. It's an easy answer. I can answer that question. Is he better or worse than Putin?
I mean, I think Putin is more dangerous. If you better or worse is the wrong word to use. I think he is more dangerous than Trump.
Okay, we'll go that far. And Xi Jinping, the Chinese leader?
No, I don't think
Donald Trump, better or worse? Let's just play a little bit of, either or.
I don't think Xi is dangerous. Because
you don't think Xi Jinping is dangerous?
Not in the same way as Putin, because he recognizes the importance of trade as far as China is concerned.
It's okay that he imprisons like 1 million Uyghurs and uses slave labour.
Certainly not okay. Of course not. No, I'm not saying that. You can't make these comparisons. You can be critical of each of them.
I think you can be critical of Donald Trump, but you could also recognise he is not as mad or as bad as an Iranian mullah.
I think he's not as bad or as mad as an Iranian mullah.
Wow, we got there in the end. I'm just extraordinary. Lord Foulkes, Labour peer, former minister under Tony Blair. I didn't know where that conversation was going, but wow. Thank you very much indeed for that. Philip Ingram, listening to all that. Your face was a picture.
I've never seen a perfect example of someone who is so naive about what is going on around the world. Let me put the reality into some of the things that he said. He said 90 million people adopted a new leader in Iran. They didn't. 90 million people didn't vote for a new leader. He said he said diplomacy, not war. War is diplomacy by other means, as outlined by Karl von Clausewitz, who studied everything else in there. He turned around and said it was right for us not to attack Iran. We were not asked to attack Iran. We were asked that our bases could be used by the United States. Keir Starmer misled the country by saying the Americans couldn't use Diego Garcia and couldn't use RAF Fairford, but they were using other bases and they were using other capabilities. For example, Prestwick Airport outside Glasgow had over 20 flights of transport and refuelling aircraft before the 28th of February, heading down to the Middle East and all the rest to directly support what was going on. We had other things that provided targeting information. He is so wrong in everything that he said. And I remember sitting in the studio with you and we debated when Lord Mandelson came in, and we turned around and went, that's a brave move, because we quoted back to my old favourite, yes, Prime Minister.
Yeah, I distinctly remember discussing it. It was just quite bizarre. How would we not have discussed that item? Indeed. 12:27 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to take your calls in a few minutes. Before that, we are going to talk to a former senior BBC executive, Jamie Angus, about what the outgoing BBC Director General, Tim Davie, has had to say about whether or not the BBC has the right to exist. That's up next. Stay tuned.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:30 is the time. Now, a little bit late getting my next guest, and I hope you'll understand. It's got something of a heated debate we just had then. But my next guest is Jamie Angus. He's a former senior BBC executive and joins us now to discuss the latest words of the Director General outgoing of the BBC. A very, very good afternoon to you, Jamie.
Hi, good afternoon. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Tim Davie's done an interview in which he has said in a podcast that the BBC has no right to exist unless it proves its value. He's admitted that the public trust is in full-on crisis after a string of serious mistakes. But given that we are looking at the BBC licence fee rising by £5.50 to £180 a year in April, which is also when Tim Davie will finally step down, it's extraordinary. He's still there all this time. Is he right that BBC has no right to exist unless it proves its value? And does it prove its value?
Well, I think he is right. It doesn't have a right to exist. I mean, Julia, we live in a democracy, and if people decide they don't want a public broadcaster, they don't have to have one. And I think that's why the BBC does need to prove that it's valued and trusted and loved by its audience. I think broadly it does still continue to do that, but that's not to say that it doesn't get involved in pretty intractable disputes and rows almost inevitably throughout its life and now. And I think what's important is how it's led, what the purpose of it is, that it fulfills those public purposes so that people not only agree to pay for it, but want to pay for it. And I'd like to see a license fee settlement come up next year that allows that to happen, so that people actually want to pay for the BBC and can pay more for the BBC if they really love it, for example.
Well, actually, I never, until I think October the 7th, I think I was certainly not a defund the BBC person. We have guests on from that organisation. People say, need to get rid of the BBC. I say, no, I just want the BBC to go back to a much smaller body providing, good quality news and neutral news and factual programmes, and performing that absolutely vital role that often the market can't deliver. But I have to say, I find their behaviour since October the 7th and the news coverage so repulsive. I mean, I have to obey the law. I'm in a job where I've got to obey the law, right? I still pay for my licence fee, but I really, really object to it. And even though I'll be watching some BBCs, I still just don't think it is value for money anymore. And we know that something like 2 million people in the last few years have stopped paying for their licence fee. Many people resenting it. People like me who were happy to go along with it for years. You might moan about your Christmas programming repeats or whatever, but fundamentally felt it was the right thing to have a public service broadcaster, no longer feel that it does provide a public service. It provides, let's face it, propaganda.
I don't agree with that, and I think
you've not watched any BBC lately.
The BBC is still watched regularly and used regularly by 80% of the population in any given week. That's not to say, you're absolutely right, Julia, that the BBC now increasingly tends to get dragged into every single culture war issue that passes.
No, I disagree. It doesn't get dragged.
The coverage of Gaza or the coverage of trans issues. Well, of course, because the BBC as a news provider and a huge provider of other content in the market is involved in all these issues, and people see and hear what it says, and people are right to have their own critical views of whatever it may be, whether it's coverage of Israel and Gaza or any other issue. The BBC's got to decide what the right and fair way is to report those issues. But the fact of it being at the centre of controversy is not in itself an argument for not having the BBC. The argument for not having the BBC is that people don't want it or need it or use it anymore, and I don't think we are in that place.
No, but we know that public support and public trust in the BBC has massively gone down in recent years, and I would say that is the doing of the BBC themselves. Whereas I would previously have trusted a lot of the BBC output, I no longer do. But I think the Trump derangement syndrome, people accuse me of that, but I think it's off the scale. I think the blatant anti-Semitism, I had a conversation with Tim Davie directly about this a year or two ago, I think is shocking, and absolutely shocking and unprofessional. The trans obsession, again, another big issue. And you can say these are culture wars and the BBC gets caught in the middle of it. But there are lots of news organisations that do manage to sort of kind of walk that tightrope rather more nimbly, whereas the BBC kind of went all in, full in on all of these things. Have they not brought a lot of this on themselves by being basically, although they're big on diversity in terms of the colour of someone's skin or their sexuality and that actually there isn't a diversity of thought within the BBC a lot of the time, and actually they kind of live in this sort of little BBC bubble of Guardian reading, and they think that, and living in Islington and going to the same dinner parties, that they think that they are representing neutral views when in fact their views are actually minority views in the country.
I think there is something in that, and as someone who's been in the BBC for almost half a lifetime and left the BBC about 3 or 4 years ago, I think looking into it from the outside, you absolutely can see that. And I'd written and spoken about, for example, the coverage of President Trump that I spend a lot of time living and working in the US at the moment, and just a real inability to kind of see and report the Donald Trump story in a way that it appears to lots of Americans and help audiences in the UK understand what's actually happening in America. I think that has been an issue, and there are valid criticisms around that. But I guess what I'm asking you to do is draw a distinction between areas where you think the BBC has fallen down in its obligation to impartiality or its reporting, and throwing the baby out with the bathwater, if you like, and ending up fatally undermining the BBC at a time when there is a really acute need for a public broadcaster. And maybe we disagree on that, but I would be prepared to defend the fact that we do need a public broadcaster. It has to do things, as you say, that the market can't do, like BBC Local Radio or the wonderful BBC World Service, which I used to be privileged enough to lead. But in order to do those things, it needs to continue to be a universal provider, a big provider in the market, and to be used by most of the people most of the time. How do you find a way to that?
I agree with you, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I would say that the BBC have brought this on themselves with their poor judgment by their senior executives, and I would say arrogance as well. Do you think the BBC is held to account enough? I mean, if you want to make a complaint about something, I should have added in their climate change hysteria as well. And blatant, provable lies being on the front page of the BBC website on a regular basis on that issue. I mean, it's just extraordinary. If you want to complain about something on the BBC website, on radio or television, you have to complain to the BBC in the first order. And most of these complaints are thrown out unless someone has said, that only pregnant women have babies rather than pregnant people, and they're a newsreader and they get told off for it. Whereas I face Ofcom complaints. Someone can complain to Ofcom, and then we have to take that on. Should the BBC be more clearly held to account directly with an outside body rather than basically marking its own homework?
Well, the BBC is under Ofcom regulation now,
only very late down the stage of complaining.
I don't think the BBC system is any different to yours. If people have got a complaint about talkTV, they come to you first, and if you don't reach a resolution with them, they go to Ofcom. But look, to your broader point, I think this is exactly the right time to be having this debate. BBC Charter needs to be set again next year. Tim Davies said in the podcast that these headlines have come from. He said that the BBC did need to be more accountable to its audiences. And you're absolutely right that anyone who pays the licence fee or pays for the BBC, particularly as they're forced to pay for it, is a stakeholder in the BBC. Yeah. And they have an extra special right to have their voice heard and to have any complaints or concerns that they have evaluated and concerned. But obviously that's also a huge privilege, but also a huge burden for the BBC, because it has to take into account the views and opinions of absolutely everybody who uses it, and that's what a public broadcaster is all about.
Do you think that there's been lots of talk about moving to a different form of funding, say a direct? Well, it is. I mean, licence fee is a tax. As you say, I don't watch any live television of any sort. Not watching the BBC doesn't exempt you from getting your licence fee, but that moving to just it coming out of general taxation as a hypothecated tax on the side. Do you think that may be the future?
Personally, my view is that there should be a licence fee. It should be lower than it is now. It should probably be charged per person rather than per household, and it should be charged somehow through broadband utility levy or a mobile phone contract levy. And then on top of that, people should be able to choose to pay for more of the BBC and for enhanced signed-in services. So essentially you have a two-tier licence fee where everyone pays a little bit, for the basics, and then the BBC has to earn subscription revenue from the really quite large number of people in the UK who would pay more for it.
And if they're so popular and people want their services, they will pay for it. That's a really interesting proposition. Jamie Angus, so appreciate you joining us and appreciate you hanging on. We were having a little bit of set two with the Lord Folks, former senior BBC executive Jamie Angus there. Let's just remind you, we are giving you the chance to win 2 hospitality tickets right now to the British Grand Prix on Sunday the 5th of July with the full Racing Green trackside experience. This is the ultimate setup for race day. You'll get exclusive grandstand seats at the Loop and Village Corners, plus inner track access to watch the drivers arriving at the paddock. Listen up to find out how you could be in with a chance to win.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 20th of March 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
It is indeed the perfect Silverstone race day experience for any F1 fans, so don't miss out. Philip Ingram, I'm going to let you come back in there. I know you're desperate to come back in on the BBC debate there. I was never a defund the BBC person. I think they've just behaved so appallingly in terms of blatant not doing their job during lockdown, their lies over climate change and pushing the trans thing, the anti-Semitic. I mean, Radio 4 is literally just, and let's have another anti-Semitism hour. I mean, I just find it just intolerable to listen to watch a lot of their programming now.
I used to be a BBC fan. I'm not anymore. And I think what the BBC fails to do is recognise that it doesn't inform, it influences. And this is...
They think that's their job as well.
And they think they're informing by influencing, and they don't do that. And we get such, especially in BBC News, we get such diversity of influencers. I used to respect Jeremy Bowen hugely. I don't in the slightest anymore because he's gone completely off track in his reporting from the Middle East. But I do respect Steve Rosenberg enormously because his reporting from Russia is exceptionally brave, very well balanced, and really, really informs. And this is where the BBC needs to sort of look at the best bits and make sure that they take the lessons from those and apply them across all of it if we are going to continue with the licence fee or something else.
This is fundamentally a problem in top management.
Yeah, very much so.
That's fundamentally the issue.
Yes.
And some of them are going, I have no expectation that new top management will be any better.
No,
that's the problem.
Definitely not.
2:42 is time. We're going to take a break and then we're going to take your calls. A lot of you still wanted to talk about Peter Mandelson and the Prime Minister and why on earth is he still in a job when he's basically lied to us about what he did know then, and he did know it then, about Peter Mandelson and his close links with Jeffrey Epstein when he appointed him as our ambassador to the US. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000. Lots of you want to have your say about Peter Mandelson and Keir Starmer still in the job, even though he appointed him to a job he had to sack him from. Matthew's in Warrington. Hello, Matthew, what do you want to say?
Hi, Julie. You've been on fire today, lady. Oh, you're running on 6 cylinders, red diesel. I've loved it today.
They should send me to it. They should send me to the Strait of Hormuz. Sort that out.
Lord Faulkner's still having a wee lie down. His head fell off.
That got very lively, didn't it? Anyway, what do you want to say about Mandy?
Oh, yeah. So, for me, the Labour Party, back in the day, they were all for women's rights, looking after women, making sure they got equal pay. There was domestic violence, rapes was done. That now is way off the boil. The way they treat women is disgraceful. The rape trials, the way, because it doesn't suit their narrative, because they don't want to upset a certain voting members of their party. Yeah. And I think it's disgraceful how women are being treated by this Labour Party. And I'm no Labour man by a long way, and I grew up with my mum in domestic violence, and in the 70s and 80s it was terrible. And now, how they're treating women, that Jewish women, children, girls from all ethnic backgrounds, they should hang their heads in shame.
Yeah, and they still think they're the good guys. They think they're the good guys. That's the bit that I find so strange.
He stands there on telly and says, we're not going to put up with this. He's done absolutely nothing. He is absolutely petrified. He's meant to be Prime Minister and care for everyone. He's even got his own MP, my Warrington MP, talking about being raped in Parliament, and he's still carrying it through. What do you think these judges are going to say?
The jury trials,
Yeah. And they're not going to do anything, because when they do get them going, there's no prisons to put them all in.
Exactly.
So we're always going to have it. It's just disgrace, absolute disgrace. And any woman, even what they did with the ladies with their pensions, they said they were going to give it them, and they didn't. They just blatantly lied.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they should give the WASPy women on balance, the money, but they shouldn't have promised to do it and then not done it.
Yeah, and it's like even when Rachel lost her abacus and she was upsetting on PMQs and crying, he didn't support her. He threw her under the bus. She was having a meltdown, and he didn't help. And that's his chance. What a disgrace! He's the most horrible man I've ever met. I absolutely detest the fella.
This is my thing. I genuinely don't think he's a nice person. I think he's actually really quite. Again, I think he's a narcissist. I think he's a preening moral peacock with just it's all fake. It's just all fake. Matthew, you got that off your chest. I love that. Lost her abacus. I don't know why it made me chuckle so much. Thank you very much indeed. Great call. I know this one's going to be a great call as well. Georgina in London's on the line. Take it away, Georgina.
Oh, well, I think Keir Starmer is a morally bankrupt individual, Julia. Mandelson should never have been appointed to the as US ambassador. Just because you're Prime Minister doesn't mean that you're unaccountable for your actions and your decisions. And these were his decisions, Julia.
That's the job of being PM.
Absolutely. He misled Parliament by lying and telling the House that he was unaware of Mandelson's dealings, and he was lying to them, barefaced. But he was aware, and it sickens me by the lack of empathy by both men, both he and Mandelson, have shown towards Epstein's victims. But what can we expect after what, empathy is shown to the little girls who've been raped by gangs in this country? It doesn't surprise me, Julia. And as for Keir Starmer, to give such a prevalent appointment, knowing all about Mandelson's past and ongoing relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, even after Jeffrey Epstein was incarcerated for soliciting minors for prostitution, it's disgraceful. This was more than a grave error of judgment on behalf of our so-called Prime Minister. I really don't think... I don't think he can hold on and remain as leader of this government, given these findings. He's become a liability to the Labour Party. The only possible explanations I can see is that either Mandelson is holding them to ransom with information that the present leader of the government would rather we didn't know, or Starmer has been given direct orders from someone higher than himself to appoint that man to this position. But something very stinky is in the potpourri, let me tell you, especially after hearing that Mandelson wanted over £500,000 severance package, and he's had £75,000.
But that was a bargain, according to the civil service, Georgina.
A bargain? Hang on a minute, Julia.
They thought they'd got a good deal. I know. You're on my money. Georgina, I'm going to have to leave you there. I've got to squeeze another break in before the top of the hour. I'm so sorry. Call again, as I know you will. We wouldn't miss it for the world. Georgina in London there on Mandelson. Up next, going to be talking about a wake-up call for Ed Miliband on net zero, according to Sir Jim Ratcliffe, over this war in Iran and the impact on the oil price. That's up next. This is Talk.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:51 is the time. Let's go straight to my next guest and talk about what Sir Jim Ratcliffe has had to say about Ed Miliband and net zero. Rupert Darwell is the author of Green Tyranny and joins us. A very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Well, so Jim Ratcliffe, he says quite a lot of sensible things. He's a very clever man, very rich, self-made man, and going to get in trouble because he moved to Monaco at the age of 68. I don't have an issue with that. But he says the Iran crisis is a wake-up call for Ed Miliband, who's our Let's All Go Back to Living in Caves secretary. He said it should prompt him to rethink his approach to the North Sea. He's called on the Energy Secretary to approve 2 new gas developments, the Rosebank and Jackdaw fields, and allow further exploration. Tell us the background to this and tell us what you make of what Ratcliffe says.
Well, of course, Jim Ratcliffe's absolutely right. He's a petrochemical entrepreneur. He knows that his business depends on having cheap, available hydrocarbons, and also that modern society needs. Yeah. It's not just about plastics or petrochemicals and so forth. It's fertilizer. We need this stuff to make fertilizer,
which makes food. Yeah.
To grow food.
We need it for everything.
We need it for modern civilization. So it is, as he says, a wake-up call to Ed Miliband and also to the political elite in general. We also had a wake-up call in 2022 when Putin invaded Ukraine. In fact, throughout the autumn of the previous year, 2021, Putin was squeezing gas supplies to Western Europe. Yeah. If you remember, the price of natural gas was soared, and we were all told, "Oh no, this shows we must rely on windmills and solar farms." And it was rubbish then, and it's rubbish now. Yeah. And still, we haven't learnt the lesson.
And that's the really, really painful bit, isn't it? Because there are still people, and you see Ed Miliband. I mean, he talks absolute abject nonsense on this, and the man genuinely doesn't know what he's talking about on this subject, because there isn't a single person in industry or even in the renewable field who doesn't know and believe that we're going to be using fossil fuels as the majority of our fuel for the foreseeable future for decades to come. If another super duper clean energy appears, by all means, let's use it. But the reality is that wind and sun are not reliable, and that's why we need to have gas and oil and nuclear. But this is it. We had that wake-up call in 22. They've doubled down. I mean, the Tory government just as bad, but actually Ed Miliband's even more, sort of religious zealot about this. And he's always argued that, we have to have more reliable, more renewable energy, because then we don't have to rely on the despots and the people like in the Middle East or the Putins. But that's not where we get our oil and gas from anyway, is it? It's America and Norway mostly.
Well, the other flaw is that for us, as you point out, for as long as we can see into the future, we will need hydrocarbons to keep the lights on. It's as simple as that. The fact is, we don't need wind and solar. If wind and solar just disappeared, we could still keep the lights on. We'd still have electricity, but we don't need wind and solar. And that is the great big con of this. We are paying record high electricity prices, driven up by subsidies for wind and solar, and we simply we can survive well with them, but we do need natural gas for our power stations. It was a terrible mistake to power past coal. Remember that with Alok Sharma blowing up a
makes me cry looking at it. Yeah,
and the Italians are talking about turning on their coal-fired power stations again. They didn't blow them up, they just retired them, but they can use them. We blew them up, so we don't even have that available.
Filled in the fracking wells as well. I mean, this is the thing. We're always told, well, we're the victim of these international gas prices, but the reality is we still face much higher gas prices than pretty much any other country in the Western world, and we do so because we have to import it, and we use gas as it's a final unit, isn't a marginal unit. The cost of that for basically, which is used most of the time to keep the lights on and keep the heat going and keep the country functioning, that ends up being paid as a final unit. But the reality is, we're going to rely on this for many, many decades to come. But if we are powering down, we're not allowing any new investment in oil fields and gas fields in the North Sea, but we're going to carry on basically importing it from the exact same oil fields and gas fields Norway is drilling in the North Sea, and we're taking it from America. We're having it on ships through the Straits of Hormuz or through the Panama Canal. The reality is that we are going to be dependent on whatever is going on in the world, and in an uncertain world, as Jim Ratcliffe has pointed out, we don't have reliable, plentiful energy, and that means that we are not safe.
That's absolutely right. The Greens and Ed Miliband are making us more victims, if you like. They are increasing our exposure by preventing us developing our own supplies. It's quite obvious. The more domestic production you have, the better off you are. It really, but the thing is, Julia, people understand this. That's why they're so rattled. That's why Ed Miliband looks so crazed, because actually he knows he doesn't have a leg to stand on.
Do you think we're going to get another one of those famous Keir Starmer U-turns?
I don't think we will, unfortunately.
The one I'd really want.
I think Julia, I think basically it's going to need a change of government, and it's going to happen after the election. But until then, I think U-turns are a dream.
We'll just try and keep the lights on. Rupert Darwell, author of Green Tyranny, thank you very much indeed. Just to let you know, the Prime Minister Keir Starmer is, as we expected, he is now on a visit in Northern Ireland. He's in Belfast. He's currently speaking about the cost of living and bills, but we know obviously all of the questions when they come are going to be immediately about Mandelson and what he knew when, and why has he not resigned, no doubt. But Philip Ingram is still with me. Philip, again, we're just not going to see a U-turn or something. We really do need a U-turn on, but all the parties are pretty much as bad as each other on this one. And again, apart from reform, Tories are now moving towards that reform policy, which is dropping net zero. Reform are already totally... they're the only sane ones on this issue. It's not a party political matter.
Well, exactly. And, with what's going on with the energy around the world at the moment, we've got billions of barrels or millions of barrels of oil and gas in the North Sea. We should be exploiting that, because, us standing up and waving this green little flag...
It's just embarrassing.
Because Ed Milliwatt says we need to, and paying £13 billion to do it is ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting, the Prime Minister talking about, he says that Iran conflicts will cause concern for people, and talking about the cost of living, of course, very much related in terms of oil and gas prices.
We could fix that
but an awful lot of the prices we pay at the pumps and for our energy bills at home are, what a surprise, taxes that they choose to put on.
Drill, baby, drill.
Yeah, absolutely. Ian Collins is here, delighted to say afternoon.
Hello. You haven't got a windmill in your garden? What's wrong with you?
Do you not have a heat pump? Do you not drive an EV?
Pump, windmills, solar panels? No, I've got none of the